Swami Araharo Hara. Araharo Hara Swami Araharo Hara. Araharo Hara Swami Araharo Hara. Araharo Hara Swami Araharo Hara. கந்தனுக்கு அரோஹரா, வேலனுக்கு அரோஹரா, முருகனுக்கு அரோஹரா. அரஹரோஹரா சுவாமி அரஹரோஹரா. அரஹரோஹரா சுவாமி அரஹரோஹரா. Namaskaram VasanthiMā. Namaskaram everybody. Taking an enchanting digression, vaLLi kaNavan, today's song of VasanthiMā. In fact, her choice isn't in Carnatic music. That's why I said taking a digression. Strictly speaking, it isn't in Carnatic music, but a fantastic and popular genre of its own called kāvaDi sindu. Very catchy, foot-tappingly dance-worthy, traditional folk songs in Tamil. Literally, kāvaDi sindu refers to the load shedding. Yes, you've heard of load shedding in electrical fields and computational network fields. Here we're talking of kāvaDi sindu as load shedding. KāvaDi is a load, a burden, and we want to drop that. So if you don't like the term load shedding, you could call it burden dropping. That's what KāvaDi sindu is all about. Most people perform the ritual of KāvaDi in Tamil Nadu as well as other parts of India, Singapore, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Western Europe and Canada in very large numbers. Many of them know the significance of it, but quite a few do it without even knowing its significance. But essentially, what is KāvaDi? It's basically a load that is being carried. And the tradition started from one of the disciples of Agastya Maharishi, who is credited to have established, Agastya Maharishi is said to have established numerous number of consecrated spaces on the banks of Kaveri, right from Talakaveri in Karnataka all the way to Pumpuhar in Tamil Nadu, where the holy Kaveri river merges into the ocean. Like Ganga Sagar in West Bengal, you have this Kaveri Sagar or the delta region where it merges. And throughout this strip or stretch, we have numerous temples and other holy places of great energy that we can easily access, irrespective of whether we are advanced seekers or beginners. There is something for each and every one of us. And one of these temples, not exactly on the Kaveri banks, but a little away, is on the Parini hills. And those very hills are actually twin hills, one on which the temple is there and the other is an adjacent hill. And both these hills were said to have been brought all the way from the Himalayas by a disciple of Agastya Maharishi, who was of enormous strength, endowed with the tamasic gunās and therefore referred to as an asura. And he was amongst those who were defeated by the rājasic gunās, whose army was headed by Murugan. And when he was bringing these two hills called the Shivagiri and the Shaktigiri all the way from the Himalayas to Dakshin Bharat to be established at a particular place that Agastya Maharishi wanted it to be established at. But Shakti and Shiva, who were responsible for those giris, had other plans. And at the same time, the story of the fruit of wisdom happened, as many of you might know, with Narada Maharishi bringing that fruit of wisdom, handing it over to Shiva and both the sons, one who represents the removal of obstacles, Ganesha, and the other who represents the valor and courage. So which is to be given the fruit of wisdom? Is the one which is of a mathematical genius, that is Ganesha, or is the one who is a physicist and a great warrior commander? Is he the one who can receive it? But of course, both of them were very young kids at that point of time, maturing into their intelligences. And then the fruit of wisdom was eventually given to Ganesha, because the competition which was held said that one has to go around the universe 3 times, and whoever can do that first or fastest would get it. And Ganesha did that just by going around his parents, recognizing that the Ardhanarishwara Tattva of nothingness and its energy is all that the entire universe is. And so obviously he already had that seed of wisdom, which is what he was celebrated for and awarded with the fruit of wisdom. And this angered our valor and courage, which is personalized by Murugā. And that valor and courage left Shakti and Shiva, the energy and the nothingness, and then came down south to Dakshin Bharat, to where Tamil Nadu is currently. And he just went and stood on those 2 hills, which were just placed temporarily by Idumban, that disciple or student of Agastya. And then the hills became so heavy because of the presence of Murugā that he could not take it anymore. He fought and lost, and then recognized that it was the same commander-in-chief of our rājasic gunās, our valor and courage, that the lethargy was trying to fight. And therefore he surrendered and attained mukti or moksha. Yes, even the tamasic gunas can be liberated, so can the rājasic gunas eventually, and finally even the sattvic gunas have to be liberated if we were to establish ourselves in mukti or moksha. All the gunas we have to be giving up. That is what is known as the concept of triguṇātīta. So that's the way in which the kāvaDi actually started, with Idumban carrying the 2 hills on a balance. Imagine the strength of that rod. As an engineer, we think if 2 rods were to be hung at balance on either side of what kind of a rod it might be. That's another thing that we have to explore, maybe for another day, because that's a digression or diversion. And that kāvaDi, which Idumban bore, though he was an Ashura and very strong, was indeed a very difficult burden or load. And he had to drop that burden, he had to shed that load, he had to sindu that kāvaDi. Sindirudhu, paal sindirudhu, thanni sindirudhu means milk or water is spilt. So spilling the burden at the feet of our valor and courage is what kāvaDi is all about, and or kāvaDi sindu rather is all about. And the very act of taking the kāvaDi and handing it over at a temple of Murugā is to say that what I thought was a burden was imaginary, and that imaginary burden or load that I always thought I was carrying, like the person on the train who carries his baggage thinking that it might be too heavy for the train, and therefore that's the reason why it's going slow. So if he were to carry the luggage within the train, then the train wouldn't have to bear that load. That is so stupid, right? Because even if he were to be carrying his baggage inside the train, through his feet, the weight of the load still gets transferred to the train, and therefore the train is still carrying the same load whether he would drop it down or not. So it's as stupid as that if we think we have any burdens in life. And I'm talking about everybody, without an exception, whether they might have physical challenges, mental challenges, intellectual challenges, job challenges, relationship challenges. Every one of these things, mind you, my dear friends, I have gone through, and I know that each one of them is stupidity to be thought of as a burden or a load. I've seen other people who have far more issues with their body, mind, and intellect, and even wealth-wise or job-wise or relationship-wise, and still lead a very happy, blissful, peaceful life, loving life, all possible just because they recognize that what they think as burden is not actually a burden. As I already mentioned in a previous discourse, troubles are inevitable, but suffering is not at all necessary. It is optional. So please don't suffer. Please don't have these burdens. Drop them, shed them. If you can't do that by yourself, listen to today's song, the kaVaDi Sindu by VasanthiMā, and I'm sure you will naturally drop it. You wouldn't have a choice. Or listen to more of these if your depth of imagination is so much that you can't so easily shed the load or the burden after just one song. So listen to more of these kaVaDi Sindus. They're amazing. Dance to them, and I'm sure you will load shed or burden drop. It's basically spilling out of all of one's troubles and pains, physical or emotional. How much more fun if we could do it with this kind of a song, dance. It's basically an exercise video if you would like to treat it that way. Just put on the song and dance to it, and recognize that all your burdens are actually dropping away. They were never actually being carried by you, but imagine to be carried by you, and like the person in the train. So just please, for heaven's sake, so-called heaven's sake, drop it. Okay. So today's composition is quite a recent one. She's been singing songs which are a millennia old, many centuries old. This is relatively much newer. I don't know the exact date. Very, very interesting stories related to the origin of this song. We'll come to that a little later. But today's composition is quite a recent one, and curiously, to give you a hint of what's coming, ascribed to a Tamil Nadu head constable. Police head constable. Yes, you heard me right. It is a policeman who wrote this song. At least that's what it's credited to. And many other people confirm this, validate this. So it must be true. And yeah, in fact, his name itself is a giveaway. In Tamil Nadu, we call head or head constable, the head in the adjective that, which means that for all the constables is the head person, the main leader of the regular police constables, called a head constable, as many of you might be aware of. And in Tamil Nadu, we call head as eight, yeah, or it's a Tamilized version of the English word head, and so we say etayya. Etayya means some sir or a respectable term, respectable suffix or prefix, or it can be used as a word by itself. Ayya. Ayya means somebody whom we respect, a sir. And we call police constables, or in particular the head constable, as etayya. Okay, so by name, this particular person, because of this reference, he was actually called, and that's how this song is ascribed to, as the composer being Etayya Ambasamudram Subrāyalu Swamigal. Ambasamudram being the place from where he is, like in my name, Harur Sampath. Harur is the native place from where I am in Dharmapuri Mavatam, or district of Tamil Nadu, at least 4 generations before in my paternal side, and because I'm a 4th generation Bengalurian, either from my maternal or paternal sides, but nonetheless it continues in the name as to where my origins were, and that root should never be forgotten. So similarly, this particular person was from a town in Tamil Nadu called Ambasamudram, and therefore his name along with his title became Etayya Ambasamudram Subrāyalu Swamigal. Rayulu, you can understand, is Telugu. So just like Tyagaraja and Shama Shastri and many other imports, Tamil Nadu has benefited a lot from the Telugu population, and this is one of them, Subrāyalu Swamigal, because of the respect given to him. But more on the strange way in which this song started trending. Yes, it is a very popular song. So it's not just these MTV videos which trend. It's this song also in its own way has been trending, and the way it started trending I will cover a little later in the discourse. But this folk song, I should tell you, is sung by many singers in a melody not exactly same as shenjuruTTi, but similar to this particular ragam. ShenjuruTTi is also known as jhunjhūti, which is a derivative or a janya or born out of the 28th Melakarta, again the Venkatamaki system from Venkatamaki Dikshitar of Karnataka. So this is the 28th Melakarta called Harikamboji. You're familiar with because I've talked about another raga which was born of this earlier on. So out of that Harikamboji ragam, jhunjhūti or what is known as shenjuruTTi was born, and out of this this tune is kind of adapted. So it's not exactly shenjuruTTi or jhunjhūti, or for that matter the Harikamboji from which all of this is derived, or the Samaveda if you keep tracing back the roots. Just like if we trace back the roots, I would be from Harur, but essentially kāvaDi sindu, this particular kāvaDi sindu at least, is from that kind of a raga, and most other kāvaDi sindus are of a similar metti or similar kind of dance numbers. The more important thing is the thalam which goes to it. I'll come to that. So it is the primordial rhythm, obviously. Shiva's son, therefore Adi Yogi, Adi Guru, Adi Nata's son, Murugā, who became his own guru and taught him the meaning of Aumkara, the Pranava mantra, the waking, dream and deep sleep state. So obviously the primordial rhythm is named as Adi Talam, right? So that's what this is also based on. So unlike our previous episodes on the this particular channel, Srimati Vasanthi Sampath channel, I'll not spend any more time elaborating upon the technicalities of ragam and talam today, because this song is a folk song derived from Carnatic, but it's taken a genre of its own. And that's why I'm wearing something Japanese today, to be in mood for that kind of derivative, like how Japanese Buddhism is derived from Indian Sanatana Dharma eventually, so we can trace back the roots. So instead of ragam and talam, that is the melody and the rhythm or beat, the father and mother typically, I will instead go to the guru of this particular song, which is basically the bhava. Okay, so as important as ragam and talam are in bharata, the first syllable itself is bha for bhava. Only later ra for ragam and tha for talam comes. So Bharata, or our country, or Bharatanatyam, the dance of our country, are all based on these three. So bha is very, very important. And therefore, in this song, more in particular, because more than the ragam and the talam, more than the parents, it's guru or guru guha who is important. So it's the bhava, or what is bhava is basically many different connotations to it. Most Indian words, especially the Sanskrit and Tamil words, do not have a direct equivalent. So for our purposes, we can think of bhava as emotion. Okay, so emoting, empathizing, and things like that. So it's the bhava or emotion that's far more crucial and takes precedence in today's rendition as well as discourse, both before and after the song. as usual. Want to sandwich the best right in between every sandwich, be it a burger or any other kind of sandwich, including the ones we use in aircraft, like the composite structures. They are all essentially ones in which the centerpiece plays a very important role. That's why it's in center stage, and same is the case over here. So I always ensure that VasanthiMā's main offering, which is the main offering of the entire video and the channel, is right in between, just embellished with my discourses on either side, giving you the introductory aspects before the song, so that you can relish the song with that introduction in mind. And once the song is over and you have enjoyed the song, the inner meaning of that song, the advaitic meaning, which is the USP of this channel, right? So, the discourse, as always, will unleash the ratnas, what I call as the semi-precious jnana and the precious vijnana, the science behind it all. Yes, behind, because it's hidden in the soul-stirring bhava or emotion, and easily accessible as well. Today's song in particular, there is bhava in every song, but sometimes, at least for the commoners like us, it's very difficult to see through that bhava. It's almost impossible to see through the poet's or composer's mind, but at least to some extent we can in most songs. But here we can very easily do it, because this is written with the common folks in mind. It's a folk song, so it's for the folks like you and me. And so this easily accessible sahitya, even the lyrics, it's not just the music, it's even the lyrics are very easily accessible for those who know even today's colloquial Tamil, leave alone the ancient Sangam Tamil, which is amazing. It's far more deeply connected with Sanskrit than the current Tamil. So the lyrics of this song in particular is very easily accessible, as I said. And I should also admit that though this will probably come to you, let's say, early Sunday morning or so, because of the enormous time that YouTube takes to process 4K 60 FPS videos. But nonetheless, this is being shot, both the discourse as well as VasanthiMā's rendition of this song. We are shooting on a Friday, so that's the 19th of March. And therefore, unplanned, either by VasanthiMā or by me, purely by the grace of murugā, the grace of really speaking our own valorous and expansive potential to liberate ourselves. That's what murugā really is, not a person sitting somewhere in Palani Hills or Tirupparangundram or Tirthani or Swami Malai or Kuke Subramanya or Ghati Subramanya and so many other wonderful places like Paramudir Cholai, etc. Yes, he's there as well, being omnipresent like every spiritual entity, but the more easily accessible all the time is as our own valorous and expansive potential. Valorous because of the courage, and expansive because it can expand beyond boundary conditions, beyond boundaries. So the expansive potential to liberate ourselves, that is the grace of murugā. And so neither VasanthiMā nor I planned it to have this song today. But see, it's a very special day for murugā, and therefore he has somehow designed to have this song today. So what is so special about today, March the 19th, the Friday, is that of course it's a potent Falguni Masa Shukla Paksha Shukravara. That's a different thing. Falguni Masa being the month in which the sun is entirely in the Pisces or Meena, or to most of the extent, and the full moon occurs, more particularly, that's the definition because it's a lunar definition. The full moon occurs in the Uttara Falguni nakshatra. It's not yet full moon, of course, we are going towards that. But in that journey, this is a potent Falguni Masas, Shukla, because we are waxing the moon, moving from Amavasya towards Paurnami. It's a Shukravara. It's a Friday, dedicated, of course, to Shukra, or our prosperity or luxury, or our ability to create the seminal aspects, and that is the Shukravara, or Shukracharya, the guru of all of our tamasic gunās, as important as the rājasic gunās and the sattvic gunās. So anyway, so it's not only a Falguni Masa, Shukla Paksha, Shukravara, it also happens to be, in terms of the tithi and the nakśatrā, very, very special to murugā, Saravana Bhava, Subramanya, Kartikeya. And what is it? It is a śaśti tithi, this Friday, today being a Friday. It's not always on a Friday, but turns out to be a Friday this time. It's a śaśti tithi, and it is krittikā nakśatrā today, both of which are auspicious to our own valor and courage personified, that is murugā. And this very concept of murugā, yes, murugā is a concept. It's way beyond just a particular divine entity. It's a concept, it's a conception of the amazing human mind of the seers like Agastya and the other Sapta Rishis. We have conjured up divinities in this culture of Sanatana Dharma in Bharat to benefit not only us but the entire humanity and other living beings as well. The way it has spread across without having to do any proselytization or missionary activities. It has happened all by itself just because of the power of this, and it has sustained itself for millennia after millennia throughout the history of humanity just because of its amazing inner potency, which everybody can recognize. Nobody needs to be told about it. You just can recognize it. So murugā is a concept in our Swadhisthana chakra, the second chakra from the bottom, which represents the water element, and that's the valor and courage with which the water flows, whether you see mighty rivers like Ganga, Kaveri, or in other countries as well like Nile, Amazon, etc. So this very concept of murugā is perhaps conceived because murugā, the three syllables encompass our creativity, encompass our sustainability and our destructiveness. All of these are encompassed in that, because that's what valor and courage is all about. It has to be right at the beginning of our journey. That's why it's the second. It's like second standard in our growth. That doesn't mean it's not important. Anything which is primary education is called primary because it's so important. Other things we call middle or high. No. The foundation is most important, and it comes along with us. So recognize that it's been throughout our journey, except for the range from mathematics, which is Ganesha's realm in the Mooladhara chakra. So this very concept of murugā, perhaps conceived as its own sankalpa or intention, that one of the numerous songs, one of its numerous songs, I should say, because it's the song of that conception of our valor and courage. One of its numerous songs be sung on a day. Because this so-called valor and courage, murugā himself has decided. So it's its intention, that murugā's intention, that this particular song be sung on a day which is doubly auspicious for itself through śaśti and krittikā. Many people know about śaśti and krittikā, but I'll also talk about it from an astronomical sense what it really means, and therefore from an inner sense what it really means. And even people who are aware of śaśti and krittikā from a festivity point of view and its relevance or importance for murugā, the deity in a temple or a puja room point of view, they are not aware of this inner significance, unfortunately, and as well as the astronomical significance. So for their benefit, as well as most of us who are completely new to these subjects, thanks to our English education, I'll try to talk about it. But nonetheless, double cheers therefore to our valor and courage. Valor and courage for what? To enable our liberation. Eventually, that's the ultimate goal. Whether it is Ganesha or Murugā, Ayyappa, or Lakshmi Narayana, or Saraswati, Brahma, or Parvati, Shiva, Anjaneya, whoever you take, or their concerts like Siddhi, Buddhi, vaLLi, Devyane, Sri Devi, Bhudevi, it doesn't matter. They're all basically enabling us for liberation from this cycle of birth and death, right? So we have to say, because of śaśti and krittikā, double cheers therefore to our valor and courage, which enable this journey to be accomplished. One of the most fundamental prerequisites, I would say. So let's first check out why śaśti tithi and krittikā nakśatrā are especially powerful to invoke our own valor and courage. I mean, valor and courage is mine, right? I can invoke it anytime I want, any day I want. Why śaśti and krittikā? It's easier to do that. Some days in which certain aspects of ourselves which are easier to invoke than the others. For an ultimate rishi, they can probably access any aspect of themselves any day. We could also do that as seekers when we advance and remove the K of the seeker and become a seer. But until then, let's take advantage of all of these astronomical configurations which create that energy fields in which we are, like iron filings in a magnetic field, how beautifully they arrange themselves. When the magnetic field is not there, the iron particles can do what they want, but eventually they do not form those designs which are so beautiful, right? Or accomplish certain things which can be done with a magnetic field. And those are the magnetic fields that either the śaśti tithi or krittikā nakśatrā by themselves individually provide, but today they're both together, and that's the amazing thing. So of course, when this video reaches you, it would already be past śaśti tithi and krittikā nakśatrā. I'm sorry about that, thanks to the delays that YouTube causes. But nonetheless, you would still see the significance of it in the next śaśti, which comes every fortnight, and the krittikā nakśatrā, which comes every month. So you can actually utilize those energy fields if you have listened to my discourse today. So powerful to invoke our own valor and courage to liberate ourselves here and now. See, the liberation is not somewhere else, right? So as Jivan Muktas, while living we want to get mukti. Jivan mein mukti chahiye. So we are Jivan Muktas, that's what we want to be rather. Okay, so we conceive ourselves already as that. So rather than in some distant promised land and time, the Jannat, the heaven, Vaikuntha or Kailasha, no. Many millennia later, no. Right here and now. Okay, so because that promised land and time that we don't even know where and when, or whether it even exists for that matter to start with, except in, of course, in the imagination of not ourselves but somebody else who gave it to us. It just been passed on like that, right? So first, let's talk about śaśti. I told you I'll tell you both about śaśti and krittikā. So let's talk about śaśti first and later krittikā. Okay. So astronomically accurate, as validated even many millennia later by the most sophisticated telescopes on Earth, as well as in space like the Hubble telescope, from which we keep getting amazing media coverage. Of the various galaxies, their stars, etc. even black holes, amazing pictures, and stitched together through various time-lapse coverages. Anyway, all of them are verifying what our rishis or seers actually established millennia ago, without all these sophisticated telescopes, either leave alone in space, but even on Earth. So the 15 tithis every fortnight, right? Observed every fortnight. The fortnight has 15 days, 15 days. So you have these 15 tithis. Each day is called one particular tithi. Okay. See, that which comes without seeing the date or without getting an appointment is therefore called as an atithi, a guest. A guest is supposed to be one real guest, not in the English sense. In the English sense, a guest is supposed to take an appointment with the host and then come on a particular day, or the host himself or herself is supposed to invite. No, anyone who can just walk in without being invited is an atithi. So without even seeing what tithi it is that particular day, they just walk in. That is atithi. So you see the compound word of tithi as atithi. From that you can start understanding some of the things that I'm going to say now. So the 15 tithis observed every fortnight and scientifically catalogued by our numerous astrologer, or more appropriate astrologers, kind of seeing how the astronomy affects us. So I would say they're more of astronomers who understood the how the planetary configurations as well as the constellational configurations as seen from an Earth fixed reference frame, because that's where we are. And that's something that they deciphered, how it changes and what are its time scales in which it changes, etc. Because each of it has its own periodicity, and the period is being different from each other. So these astronomical seers of Bharat, we just have to bow down to them, their amazing intelligence. So just relative positioning of the moon from the sun as observed from the earth. So it's that's what all the tithi is all about. See, you see there is the sun. The earth keeps revolving around the sun, and then there is the moon which keeps revolving around the earth. Okay, right? So now from the earth we can see the moon as well as the sun at different times of the day, different times of the month, in different locations. But now what is the relative position between the sun and the moon? So as seen from the earth, what is the background, what constellation is in the background of each one of these, or more particularly the zodiac sign? And then we just try to see what is the distance between the sun and the moon in that zodiacal sense, in that zodiacal dimension. And therefore, we say that when the sun and the moon appear together, we call it Amavasya. When the sun and the moon are opposing each other, we call it, or rather reflecting each other, we call it the Paurnami. And in between there are 14 days, and each one of them we give it a particular name. So that's, each one of those are tithis essentially. So basically it's a relative positioning of the moon from the sun, not by themselves, but as observed from the earth, as because it's all subjective, based on the observer there. So as observed from the earth by us, right? And therefore it is different at different locations. The tithi starts, the same tithi, today for example śaśti, the time at which it starts and the time at which it ends, it could be different in Vatturu or Bengaluru where I am, and very different in Europe or US or Australia where you might be listening from, or even people in India listening from various other cities to my discourse. So each of you might have in your own city or town, this particular śaśti might start and end at a very different time than what it does in my place, Bengaluru. So that's precisely what a tithi technically means. distance between sun and the moon as observed from the earth. Not distance in the sense of kilometers or whatever, this is an angular distance in projection to the zodiacal plane. Okay, so there, because it's a three-dimensional solid angle, right? So you have to project these as the vector joining the person's location, let's say from Bangalore to the center of the sun and the Bangalore to the center of the moon, and then you're basically seeing projecting it onto this plane, the ecliptic plane, where you're seeing that angle there, and that angle determines which tithi it is, right from Amavasya when they are together, Paurnami when they are opposite to each other, and then in between we divide it into 15 parts on one side as it moves from Amavasya up to Paurnami, and again 15 times when it goes back from Paurnami to Amavasya. Or each one of them is a tithi. So the same tithi occurs twice in a month, once in the waxing phase and once in the waning phase. Right. So the waning phase is when the moon moves back towards the sun, and the waxing phase is when the moon moves away from the sun in this angular projection wise. Okay, because the sun and the moon are never actually moving together. When say Amavasya they are together doesn't mean the moon is inside or even close to the sun. It might get completely burnt up, like our mind getting burnt up when it reaches the soul. I gave you a hint. Yes, the moon represents our mind, the sun represents our soul. Yes, so though precisely a tithi is all these astronomical things, it has a direct inner relevance to us, and that's what I'm coming to, because that's what is of more significance to us. We observed all these things in the outer world, but we have to take that lesson back to where we are, what we need to get conveyed with from all this, and what is the takeaway, right? We're always interested in this takeaway business, okay? So for here or away, right? So it is for taking away that we have to look at this inner significance, because we can take advantage of these fields. So the solar and the lunar fields, in fact the relative fields more so, because there's an interference that is happening that we can tap into. Right? It's for free. It's there for everybody. Why not tap into it? Just like the air that we are breathing, it's there everywhere. Water used to be like that for a long period of time, even the drinking water. But thanks to the pollution that we have created, now we have to buy water, and probably later on we have to buy air, and later on we have to probably buy sunlight, etc. But that's what our lifestyles are heading towards. But unfortunately, the way it was provided to us is all these the best things which sustain life, like air, water, etc., food, were all free. Just like you take from the trees, the forest, wild fruits, many of them edible, and then you just can sustain yourself with the water and the air and the fruits, right? So all these were for free. So it still remains these massive fields of the sun, the moon, etc. Let's try to access that. So there are multiple repercussions, I would say, to this simple definition of the term tithi. I've given you a very, very simple definition in terms of the angular projection, but there are multiple repercussions, especially in our own lives. So let's map this back to where it all began. It's not the actual sun and the moon being a cause. The actual sun and the moon are right here, and then we have projected it. That's our creation. Most people don't understand this, but as they evolve spiritually, they will recognize this. Because right now we are only doing physical perception. We think the sun and the moon are much massive, bigger things outside, and they are playing around with us in our lives. No. It's actually we are playing around with them by projecting out what we have created, and that's the reality of it all. If you don't agree with me, I would definitely not be surprised, because I wouldn't agree with it if somebody told me something like this some time back, until the evolution took place, fortunately early on for me. But then you start experiencing these things, that the entire outer world is our own creation. We are responsible for all of it. So let's map this angular projection of the sun and the moon's distance from each other, from an earth fixed reference frame back to where it all began, you and me. Yes, you and me, and VasanthiMā and all of us, the individuals. That is basically what we mean as the indivisible entities, the individuals. Yes. So essentially, the tithi is an indicator of the state of our own mind. So what state is our mind in? Okay, in relation to the real I, which is the Atma. So the mind and the Atma are the moon and the sun in reality. And when I say tithi, it's the distance between those two. And only if you have good vision both in your right and left eye, you can have a three-dimensional vision. If either one of them is gone, it's pretty much a two-dimensional vision that we are having. So we utilize the distinct images that we get on each of these retina. The brain processes all of that once the optical nerves transmit it all the way to it, to understand the depth as well, the field of the depth of the vision, right? So that's very important over here. So essentially, the tithi is an indicator of the state of our own mind in relation to the real I, the Atma. Okay, because the moon represents the mind and the sun represents the Atma. So the angular distance of the projection between the sun and the moon is equivalent to saying angular distance between the Atma and the mind. Atma is the real I and mind is what I think I am, because because the Westerners say that I think, therefore I am. So they are identifying with their thought, which means they are identifying with the mind or the moon, which is one level of evolution. At least you're understanding that you're not only the body, you come to the understanding that you're the mind. Later on you would say that I'm not only the mind as well, but I'm the intellect as well. And then you would say I'm not only the intellect, but in reality I am the Atma, right? So it's essentially the distance between these two. So Amavasya, they are together, and Paurnami, they are opposing each other. So Śaśti, what is it specifically? That's what we want to look at, and why it is important for our valor and courage, right? So yes, so all of these days are there between Amavasya and Paurnami, as well as again between Paurnami and Amavasya. Pratipa, Dvitiya, Tritiya, Chaturthi, Panchami, Śaśti, Saptami, Ashtami, Navami, Dashami, Ekadashi, Dvadashi, Trayodashi, Chaturdashi, and again either the Paurnami or the Amavasya, depending upon whether it is the waxing phase or the waning phase respectively, right? So the sixth amongst the 15 of them is Śaśti, right? And why is it important for our valor and courage? That we have to explore. And it indicates this particular sixth configuration, the kind of interaction of these two fields, the solar and lunar fields, is such that it indicates a valorous and courageous state of mind. You can actually experiment it without even knowing about what tithi it is. Just keep a diary in which you keep writing how your valor and courage changes over an entire month, and you do this for a few months, and then you can correlate with the lunar calendar and see that when the valor and courage is actually peaking, especially to do something significant in life, then because the ultimate significant thing that you can do in life is mukti or moksha that you're seeking, right? But even for the regular day-to-day lives in physical and emotional sense, or in a professional sense, if you see that the days in which it peaks is actually the sixth configuration, which is the Śaśti, either in the Shukla or the Krishna Paksha, that is basically the waxing or the waning phases of the moon. So the sixth amongst the 15 of them is Śaśti, and it indicates a valorous and courageous state of mind, as I said, ready to take on crucial tasks. Okay, however insurmountable they may seem at first sight, you still want to go grab those opportunities. So that's the power of the śaśti tithi. Okay, so this valorous state of our mind to accomplish anything at hand isn't the all dangerous blind confidence. Everybody keeps saying you should have more confidence. They say you should have more confidence. Nonsense. Confidence without a good perception is a disaster. Okay, so this is this courage and valor that we are talking about, and the courageous and valorous state of the mind that murugā represents or śaśti represents is definitely not that kind of blind confidence. Okay, it's to accomplish anything at hand, but however insurmountable or difficult it might seem, no. It isn't the all dangerous blind confidence that some of us are familiar with. Why? Because thanks to the society pushing us that way with disastrous consequences. We have seen that almost everyone is in the rat race, irrespective of whether they are rats or not. And eventually the winner of a rat race also is a rat. Okay, so let's recognize that we are not rats in a rat race. Let's get out of that rat race, but still maintain that valor and courage which have a foundation. So how can that be? Instead, the valor and courage is not a blind confidence. The valorous state of our mind on śaśti tithi in particular, such as today's Valar Pirai or Shukla Śaśti of the Falguni Masa. In every Masa or every month, you have this, every lunar month. So according to, if you look at the English calendar month, the Gregorian calendar, you would see that sometimes on a 31-day month you might have 2 śaśtis also. So when I say 3 śaśtis as well. So every month will have 2 śaśtis, but some of them can have 3 śaśtis. We are looking at a Gregorian calendar. But what I'm talking of is a lunar month from Amavasya to Amavasya. In some parts of India, we look at it that way. Amantaka or Purnantaka, which is basically from Purnima to Purnima. Either way, you would have 2 śaśtis, right? The Shukla śaśti and the Krishna śaśti, the waxing śaśti and the waning śaśti. And both of these are very interesting, because today's Shukla śaśti, the waxing phase, because just 6 days back it was Amavasya and we are moving towards a Paurnami, which means that today's Valar Pirai, we call it in Tamil, Valar Pirai means, Valar means growth, and it's basically Pirai is, you can see that it's the angular separation of the projection. That's why we say Pirai, Mundram Pirai, etc. Right? So this is a Valar Pirai, the entire time that the moon moves away from the sun in that angle projection, and this is the 6th of those 15 days in this particular fortnight, right? So this Shukla śaśti is derived through this valor and courage. Where are we getting it from? From the Amavasya, just past 6 days back, right? Through the wisdom acquired via the process of self amplification, I would say emptification, because see, you're emptifying yourself. It's not even an English word, by the way. I might be using certain words just to convey the impact of that meaning. So emptification, okay, or evacuation would be a more acceptable word for the dictionary minded. So it's a self-emptification or evacuation which happened 6 days back on the Amavasya. Now you are benefiting from all of that wisdom which you gained through that emptying yourself on the Amavasya. You have got all that valor and courage, okay? So on the preceding Amavasya Tithi, you actually had that wisdom, and you're benefiting in various ways from that wisdom. I'll not go into all those details because the other Tithis will probably cover through some other videos. Today we focus on the śaśti Tithi, right? So whatever we got on the preceding Amavasya Tithi, we are benefiting from in the form of valor and courage today. That is because it's śaśti. So contrastingly, the valorous state of our mind can happen even with the other śaśti, the Krishna śaśti or the waning phase śaśti, right? Could all that also be accomplished not through wisdom there, but on this, because it's a tei pirai. We say valar pérai when it is growing, and te pérai when it is again contracting and becoming amavasya. From Paurnami to Amavasya, that period is called te pérai. Tenji porudhu, we say, no? Right? Or getting slowly reduced in size as the moon looks, right? It's full and full circle as it looks, and then slowly it becomes a crescent, and then it vanishes from our sight, though it's all there. It's just that we are not able to see it because no reflection of the sunlight anymore. So that is Amavasya. But right from Paurnami, the 6th day, you can still see the moon. That is the Teipirai śaśti, or what we call as the Krishna Paksha śaśti in Sanskrit, right? Krishna means dark, because the attractiveness is always dark, which is like a black hole. The attractive principle is dark, and therefore Krishna Paksha śaśti basically means during the waning phase, the 6th day. That is basically the 6th day after Paurnami or full moon, right? So through and this time again we are getting valor and courage on that śaśti also. A fortnight from today, we will get valor and courage on that śaśti. But that śaśti's valor and courage is of different quality. Today's śaśti is in a valar pérai, and therefore we got it from our wisdom. There, in that Teipirai śaśti or Krishna Paksha śaśti, we will get the same valor and courage to do insurmountable tasks on this plane, as well as the spiritual plane to get to mukti or moksha or nirvana. We will do that through bhakti, not through jnana. Okay? That is, bhakti is devotion, completely being surrendering to the tasks at hand. Whatever that insurmountable goal is, whatever tasks which are necessary to be done, I'll be devoted to that and get it done. Whereas today, the process is different. I'm trying to do whatever needs to be done. I will get it done. That courage and valor, which is based on my knowledge, which is based on my wisdom, right? Jnana and vijnana. The scientifically I'm approaching it. On that śaśti, we'll approach it with devotion, completely throwing all of our toolkits, our senses, our actuators, our body, mind, intellect, all dedicated to that. That's called as sharanagati or surrender. So that is also called as bhakti, the most beautiful word, or closest to sound vibration which can relate to that sharanagati is sharanagati or bhakti, right? Or devotion that a bhakta or a devotee peaks into 6 days right after a full moon, right? That is essentially you're talking about the fullness of the moon as the bhakti, and therefore 6 days after that you are having this particular śaśti. So alternately, for the vast majority of those of us, including yours truly, who are neither bhaktas nor jnanis, we are just sadhakas, seekers. So for us, we still have access to our valor and courage. Not that only bhaktas and jnanis can have this access to the śaśti energy. In fact, they can probably have it on every day if they are really top on the ladder of spirituality. But which is actually an inward journey. The ladder is going inwards. But even those of us seekers right at the beginning stages, kindergarten students like me, we still have access to our valor and courage, either through our unwavering perseverance, which is duty-bound karma yoga, or through pure perception, which is what is the way the siddhas do it. That is through siddhi. So this pure perception or mysticism, or what the snake represents, is essentially the siddhi, or the extraordinary powers, the extra special powers that one can get by just through keen perception of what is as it is, instead of messing it up or adulterating it with our own mental thoughts, right? So we can get through unwavering perseverance, which is duty-bound karma, karma yoga rather. That's one of the paths. We can still get the valor and courage. And similarly, through pure perception, that's siddhis, or through our technically competent tantric practices, right? I'll go into these details other days, because murugā is very deeply related to tantra also. Not only devi, but murugā is also very, very closely associated with tantric practices. So I should mention this, but nonetheless, trāyati iti tantraha, trāyati iti mantraha, trāyati iti yantraha. Okay, there may various other definitions to it as well, but let's focus on it. If we are technically competent, we just know the techniques. This steps, if you take in this process, this will be accomplished. Because of that technical competence, or professional competence, I am able to get that valor and courage, and that's essentially the tantric practice. And then I could also do it by even another way. That is the right royal rajayogic practices, right? So we can do it in all these ways. We can access the valor and courage. But this particular 6th day after the new moon, that is today, and after a fortnight, the 6 days after the Paurnami, both of these can actually be accessed in a very, very different sense. So let's see by different people of different kinds of backgrounds, who are more into jnana, more into bhakti, more into karma, or more into rajayogic practices, or more into tantric practices. I like a combination of all of these. Why not? I mean, there are so many techniques. If we know these aspects, why not take advantage of all of them? I'm like Dattatreya, who had 24 gurus. Everything that he saw everywhere was his guru, and so that's essentially been my approach as well. So it's best suited. Again, each of these methods are best suited for people of different mentalities, right? So it's best suited for the technological experimentalists, I would say, and scientific theoreticians, right? The technological experimentalists would choose a tantric practice over a Rajayogic practice, which would be the forte of scientific theoreticians like me. So amongst us, engineers and scientists, respectively. So let's see about the nakshatras as well next. The 27 nakshatras or constellations every month are just relative positioning of the moon from the refined mental scape or zodiac, once again as observed from the earth, where we are located, hopefully, like you're like the juggernauts in the future. So let's map this also back to where it all began. We map the tithi back to where it all began, namely within us. We'll now map the nakshatras as well back to where it all begins, right? So here the Atma plays no role. It's directly what the location of the moon is in the background of the other stars of our universe. As seen from the earth. Yes, of course, the motion of the earth around the sun depends on the sun. So in a sense, it's a very indirect dependence on the sun, but otherwise it's predominantly what state of mind are we in? That's essentially what it is. So when we talk about the nakshatras in this way, again, all that we are doing is mapping this also back to where it all began. Yes, you're right. That's conformal mapping. I've talked about it in one of my massage and message feature series as well. So it's a conformal mapping to you and I, right? The individuals, VasanthiMā too. So essentially, the nakshatra is an indicator of the current battery percentage. You know, on your mobile phones, there's a battery percentage going all the way down from 100% to 0%, especially if you're a very heavy user and don't have an iPhone. So essentially, the nakshatra is an indicator of the current battery percentage of our own recharged mind. See, the mind needs recharging every now and then, just like the phone, otherwise it dies out of juice. It's a percentage of our own recharged mind that remains, right? So in relation to the ultimate, right? And the only reality, in relation to what? In relation to that reality which is both ultimate and in fact the only reality, right? Because it's unchanging. It's unchanging truth. See, that's the zodiac. The star constellations are seen from the earth. That background remains the same all the time. The sun looks to be at different locations at different times. The moon looks to be at different locations different times. The other planets like Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, Uranus, Neptune and maybe Pluto, all look to be at different locations at different times. The closer the planet is to the sun, the faster the movement typically, right? But the only reality or unchanging truth is that landscape behind, that is that zodiac or what we call as the constellations, right? The nakshatras. So the nakshatra is where the moon is in that background, but that background remains the same. So in that sense, is the ultimate and only reality or unchanging truth. But more than the zodiac, the treasure that we are talking about is the real, ultimate and only reality or unchanging truth with respect to which we want to see our mind. What is the correlation, right? And that ultimate unchanging truth is the Brahman, right? The eternal principle of Sanatana Dharma, the uniquely true and true in complete bold and uppercase and underline, whatever kind of emphasis you want to give it, okay? So uniquely true what? We engineers, scientists, mathematicians know. Inertial frame of reference. There's own and only true inertial frame of reference. We keep working on inertial frames of reference, but every other so-called inertial frames of reference that we work with are actually just mere approximations. The own and only real inertial frame of reference is Brahman, right? And that's what we are and what everything is in reality. And that alone exists, nothing else does. So the third amongst the 27 nakshatras, in a particular order, where we start with Aries as the first zodiac sign, Ashwini is the first nakshatra, Bharani, and third is your Krittikā. And Krittikā and Vishaka have a very interesting speciality. Vishaka is my nakshatra too. Both are associated with our valor and courage to attain the most difficult and in general, and Jivan Mukta or Mukti or liberation in particular. Both these are the ones which are spread out between a Martian and a Venetian nakshatra. Krittikā as well as Krittikā is one pada or one quarter in a Martian zodiac sign, which is Aries, and 3 quarters into a Venetian zodiac sign, which is Taurus. On the other hand, it is right the opposite for the case of our friend Vishaka, with 1 quarter in a Venetian zodiac sign, which is Libra, which is mine, so the first pada, and then the 3 into the Martian one, which is Scorpio, right? So the third amongst the 27 nakshatras, which is therefore partly in Aries and partly in Rishabha or Taurus, Aries of course being Mesha. So this Krittikā indicates the unique motherly nature to nurture You're talking of valor and courage on the one hand, and we are talking of krittikā, represented by the 6 damsels who have that motherly, nurturing nature, which all of us are supposed to have, but dormant, right? So, krittikā indicates the uniquely motherly nature to nurture what? Nurture a valorous and courageous, not person, state of mind. Okay? To nurture a valorous and courageous state, we need a unique motherly nature, right? And that's what krittikā provides. So this is to nurture a valorous and courageous state of even an aggressive and passionate mind. The mind is usually aggressive and passionate. Okay? To that, you want to give a positive sense of the valor and courage and create a murugā out of it. That's possible only for the krittikā kind of a motherly mentality, right? So, an aggressive and passionate mind is otherwise untamable, right? You need a krittikā to tame it and make it conducive for a higher purpose, right? So that's the transformatively taming. So taming is not necessarily a negative thing. You tame something which is very aggressive and utilize the same energy for something creative and productive. And in the case of murugā, as a commander-in-chief of the rājasic gunās, to ensure that the rājasic gunās, though thought to be of great danger, can actually be of utility. And that's essentially what this that's the transformatively taming and sacrificially. That's what a mother does, sacrifice, the kind of labor pain she goes while birth and during the growing up of the child, in terms of all the sacrifices that a mother typically makes. So sacrificially nurturing power of krittikā. It's both. It's two things. One is transformatively taming. The other is sacrificially nurturing. Those of you who have teenage children might think of the transformatively taming aspect, and those of you who have much younger children, probably newborns, would think of the sacrificially nurturing. But both are essential for the same mother over different periods of time, and both of which are in the krittikā nakśatrā today. And no wonder then that today's double whammy of śaśti and krittikā are so conducive to our own valorous and expansive potential to liberate ourselves, to get to mukti, to get to moksha, to get to nirvana out of this cycle of birth and death, right? Even our rājasic gunās, which is what dévās represent, even our rājasic gunās take their help. Whose help? Krittikā self. Indirectly, because they need murugā self, right? So even our rājasic gunās take the help of our valor and courage to accomplish the seemingly unaccomplishable, right? To take its help to eliminate or at least put back in place who? Not the asuras as some weird beings. Our own tamasic gunās. So, our own rājasic gunās, the passion and the aggression, want to eliminate our own lethargy and laziness and inertia, inability to do things, right? So then, but the inertia, lethargy and laziness in most of us is so strong that even the aggression and passion can do nothing. Then the aggression and passion should invoke our valor and courage, which is nurtured by krittikā, that is that kartikeya, and then we, with the help of that valor and courage that is embodied in kartikeya, that is our own valor and courage, with that our own valor and courage, we eliminate or at least put back in place. The asuras are supposed to be in the asura loka, not come and rule on the world or the heavenly planes, again within quotes. What does it mean? That means lethargy and inertia and all these things have their own place. When you sleep, that's essential, right? You need that inertia and you need deep sleep. Yesterday, by the way, was the World Sleep Day or Sleep Night. So what we are talking about is to take the help or at least put back in place our tamasic gunas to sleep where they rightly belong, right? No. Actually, though it was World Sleep Day or World Sleep Night, whatever you want to call, by the time this video reaches you, of course, thanks to the long processing times, as I already mentioned, of YouTube for 4K 60 FPS frames per second videos in particular like mine, it might be the end of the world sleep, not day or night, but world sleep weekend too might have gone. Okay, anyway, hopefully it reaches you soon enough for another krittikā or another let's say śaśti, or hopefully some other time in the future again you would have both of these occurring together. So back to the interesting history of today's song, right? vaLLi kaNavan pérai. The head constable of police, I introduced you to him already, E30 ambasamudram subrāyalu swamigal. Very good for those of you who still remember. So in Chennai, then of course Madras, IIT is still called IIT Madras. Otherwise IITM would be confused with IIT Mumbai, which remains as IITB. So this particular head constable, then in Madras, approached one of the all-time legends. Like you know of Balamurali Krishna, Bhimsen Joshi, MS Subbulakshmi, in that kind of category, or probably even better, is the all-time legend Srimati D.K. Pattammal. One of her granddaughters is also a great singer, Nitishri Mahadevan. So this head constable approaches who? This amazing singer D.K. Pattammal, who was giving a concert. Okay, towards the end of one of her live concerts, he goes to her and requests her to sing this song, which is just never heard of until that point in time. So what to make of it? Apparently penned by himself. The head constable had written that song, according to some versions of the story. Other versions recounting this episode don't push it too far away. They claim, other versions claim, that the author to be not the said police constable, E30, but instead of Subbarayalu Swami himself, it was rather his dad who had written this song. Sadguru Subrāyalu Swamigal was the dad, and Subbarayalu Swami was the police constable, apparently, right? So and it's kind of understandable, because Subba, if it's the dad's name becomes a part of the son's name, according to the Tamil culture, the way the paternal aspects are brought in. Instead of a single family name, generation after generation, the family name itself keeps changing. So my dad had Harur Vishwanathan as his last name. I have Harur Sampath as my last name, and my daughter has Harur Dinesh as the last name. So it keeps changing. The Harur, the source town or village, becomes our continuous part, but the name, the other part keeps changing, because the dad, granddad, great granddad, and so on and so forth, right? So, but rather, the dad, Sadguru Subbarayalu Swamigal, was perhaps the writer, if not the police constable, his dad. But let's continue with the story. The D.K. Pattammal gets this song, looks at it, written, of course, and then it's of course not tuned to anything. It's just written like a poem. And she's just finished one long live concert, and she's so the song appeals to her so much that very graciously Srimati D.K. Pattammal, talent personified that she is, quickly tuned it herself, and the rest is history. the amazing number of search results for vaLLi kaNavan pérai on online song platforms like Wink or Raga, Ghana, Geo Music, SoundCloud, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, and Spotify is a case in point. Okay, so you may recollect that while sharing my karika. I call this discourse as a karika in a sense. So you may recollect that while sharing my karika, or rather elaborating upon Muthuswami Dikshitar's song, which VasanthiMā sang in one of the past weeks, Subramanyena Rakshitoham. At that time, I had introduced you to my then perception of vaLLi as the personification of one of our 4 purusharthas, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Which one you remember? Well, congratulations to those of you who remembered right. It is the third one, kama. Right. So vaLLi represents kama and Devyani represents artha. If you haven't gone through why and the details behind it and how I come to that kind of inference, please go back and watch VasanthiMā's song Subramanyena Rakshitoham by Muthuswami Dikshita. Right. So let's stick to vaLLi, because vaLLi is the though vaLLi kaNavan is what we are talking about in this song, it is referred to as her husband, right? So Artha's husband, that is our prosperity's husband. We are seeking prosperity as a rightful goal in Sanatana Dharma. Not only prosperity, but also the desire to enjoy, which is prosperity is artha. I'm talking of we are talking of the desire to enjoy here. That is vaLLi, and then of course dharma and moksha. That is basically your rightful duty or righteousness, and then the liberation that murugā himself represents. So, as the so I referred to my perception at that point of time was that vaLLi is the personification of one of the purusharthas, namely kama, right? As well as our masculine or pingala, which is the suryanadi. Right, the right side is the suryanadi. Right eye also represents the sun. Left eye represents moon. The left side represents the idanadi, which is feminine, which is devyani, and the right side represents the masculine. And we are talking about feminine, masculine. Don't think of I being a male or VasanthiMā being a female kind of gender difference. Each one of us have these, irrespective of our actual biological or physical gender, we have these subtle feminine and masculine halves to us, and both of them are equally essential for a holistic life. Otherwise, you're living only half a life, if not less. So, the masculine or pingala is also called as pingala nadi, is also called as the surya nadi. It's positioned in such a way to that in the center is murugā. That is basically our valor, our courage. That's murugā. So to the right of our valor and courage is our desire or kama. Right? So as in, you would see these picturized in various temples, you would see them in my background. But at the same time, you would also see in vaLLi Malai, a very famous temple, also in Sri Lanka, in Kadragamam, amazing northern part of Sri Lanka, the Tamils there, the kind of devotion that they have to murugā. And even in Singapore, Malaysia, etc., it's so amazing. Many of us in Tamilians in India and particularly in Tamil Nadu do not have that kind of devotion that many of these people have. And I've also been closely associated with the Lankan Tamils and their temple in pérai, that is Paris, or what many people pronounce it as in France. And it's amazing the kind of temple they have. It's a small temple, but they take out a Ganesha procession every year around the roads of main roads of the capital of France. It's amazing the kind of devotion they have in terms of the kāvaDis that they take, very painful kāvaDis with the veils pierced through their skin, not only in the body but even in the face, the tongue, etc. I cannot comment on these things because it's all about how one particular person feels the devotion. But essentially, this is kāvaDi, means a burden. So the whole idea is to drop that burden. Instead of paining yourself, you drop the pains that already exist. That is the whole idea of this thing. It should not be taken to situations which seem like we are masochistically paining ourselves or making somebody else do it, even if it's our own child. I don't think it's an appropriate thing to do, because that would be, instead of masochist, it would be sadistic. Anyway, that's for a debate, and I'm not interested in that. Any case, so while that was my perception at that point of time when I was talking about Subramanya and Rakshitoham, I was talking to you about vaLLi representing our Pingala Nadi, the Surya Nadi, and the desires that come along with it. That is one of the Purusharthas, Kama. Right? While our perceptions can generally evolve, they change over time. They have stood steadfast in this particular case for me. It's been just a few weeks. Probably I still see vaLLi in that kind of a fashion. Okay, so hence today's song by VasanthiMā, who's by the way is daughter of vaLLi Ammal. So there's a vaLLi connection there too. vaLLi Ammal is my maternal grandmother. Amazing lady. I owe a lot to her for what I am today, even more so to her husband, Shri A.P. Venkatachalapati, my tata, about whom I have written an ode. Of course, Swami Sarvana Bhavananda towards the latter half of his life. I have had hundreds of gurus from all the way from Sarvana Bhavananda to Sadguru, but in between, and each and every one of them has made such a huge difference in the way I perceive life and live it too. So Dhanyosmi to all my gurus. Like as I said, I feel like Dattatreya, that everything around me is a guru. Some teach me what to do, how to be, and most of course teach how not to be and what not to do by their own life examples. In that sense, it's the Jagat Guru. So the world itself as a guru. So I've talked to you about this in the context of Kanchi Periyava as well earlier. So hence today's song by VasanthiMā for me refers to the dalliance, flirting, of our own desire. It's not of two persons flirting with each other, a flirting that is happening internally within us. What is this flirt that is happening? Well, it's a dalliance of our own desire, kama, with our own liberation, moksha. That is essentially what is happening is the Pingala or Surya Nadi and Sushumna, that is the Brahmanadi, are having an affair out there. Okay, eventually they get married, but yes, that's the affair we're talking about. What is it? So this whole song, vaLLi kaNavan pérai valipokan sonnalum, essentially what is it? What are we talking about here? Refers to the dalliance of our own desire kama with our own liberation moksha, the two purusharthas, the last two. Dharma artha you leave aside, okay? Artha is already married to moksha. The marriage happened earlier. I referred to during my talk on Kukke Subramanya in the Massage and Message series in katham.in. This is a different channel. But now coming back to VasanthiMā's channel, here we are talking of the last two Purusharthas of the four, which is Kama and Moksha. Kama as feminine form and moksha as a masculine form, personified as murugā. Right? It's also a dalliance of our pingala nadi with our kundalini shakti going through the sushumna nadi. So irrespective of our physical gender, our masculine desire or right hemisphere, so to speak, instead of calling it hemisphere, I'm not like a ball. I would rather call myself a right hemi-ellipsoid. Ellipsoid being the generalized version of a sphere, just like ellipse is a generalized version of a circle. Circle being a special case of an ellipse, and sphere being a special case of an ellipsoid. I would call myself this part as hemi-ellipsoid. That is, hemi means semi or half, right? So instead of hemisphere, it is actually a right hemi-ellipsoid because it's on my right, okay? And you're right for you, of your body. But if you're looking at my body, it's on your left side, okay? Let me not confuse you about that. It's right. Right is right. So there's a joke which says that when you're driving and you do not know which way to go, always take right, you'll be right. But you'll be in circles and you'll come back probably to the same place. Jokes apart, the hemi-ellipsoid that I'm referring to is not of the physical human body, whether what you're seeing in the video, that's me or you, but of the Ardhanarishwara linga. You know the linga shapes? The linga shapes are ellipsoids, and half the linga is this and half the linga is that. So this masculine half of the linga is what vaLLi represents. vaLLi is a woman in the way things are picturized, but if you're looking at it from an Ida Pingala point of view, she represents a Pingala and therefore the masculine form. This is the kind of a natural, raw kind of energy, as opposed to Devyana, which is a kind of a refined, divine and resplendent energy. vaLLi is more like Padmavati in Venkateshwara's story, Venkateshwar Govinda's story, or let's say even Sita, born out of the earth. Or Satyabhama, who killed her own son Narakasura, who is again Kama. So you see, she's Kama's mother. Kama can only be Kama's mother. So you see that connection. This I had not thought of earlier, but just while talking to you, this came up. So thanks to you for motivating me to come to this new discovery as well. It's amazing discovery as you get deeper and deeper into your meditation and see the wonders of it all, that it's nowhere that we begin and nowhere that we end. It's all us and us alone. That's the real truth, and these discoveries keep happening as you keep deepening your meditation. So I'm talking of the right hemi-ellipsoid of the Ardhanarishwara linga, is reminiscing in this song about its imaginary dalliance with our spiritual energy or our kundalini shakti. So it's a dalliance between who the hemi-ellipsoid of the Ardhanarishwara linga, which is nothing but the vaLLi principle, and with what? With our own spiritual energy or kundalini shakti that murugā represents. Okay, so is that the vaLLi murugā combo that we're talking about here. Similarly, when the other half of the linga, which is the other hemi-ellipsoid, the left ellipsoid, is Devyane and murugā again as a combo. And you need all the three, otherwise again, as I said, you live one half a life. So our desire conjures up the notion that it's affair with our spirit. The desire is having an affair with the spirit. So never think of these things as two human beings, one flirting with the other. No. The vaLLi and murugā and Devyana cannot be separated out and put as three separate individuals. They are all within one individual, that's either me or you or anybody else, but they are all within us. So our desire, that is vaLLi, conjures up the notion that its affair with our spirit, which means murugā, weren't merely a passing fad or a tryst. We say tryst with destiny, right? So it's not a passing fad or tryst, this beautiful flirting or affair, but rather a permanent relationship. It's not a live-in relationship, it's a permanent relationship, expanding itself into an eternal omni-desire. I talk of omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. I'm here talking of an eternal omni-desire. Omni-desire means a desire for everyone, a desire for everything, forever. That's eternal. So the inner purport of today's song is that even if a passerby were to utter the name of liberation, that is of course not in English, but in the original beautiful sound vibration, which says moksha or murugā, moksha, murugā. You see the starting and ending? And ah, and both are part of right? So moksha, murugā. Okay, so that's essentially what it is. So our desire or kama, that is vaLLi, sublimely loses itself. I'm saying itself because I'm talking of my desire or your desire. If we think of it as a person, vaLLi, we will say herself, right? So we will say vaLLi sublimely loses herself. But no, here I'm talking of our desire or kama sublimely loses itself. In what? In sublimation. Just like a camphor burning in front of you vanishes into the thin air because it has a direct conversion from solid to vapor without going through the liquid states, already gaseous, right? And occupying all the space that it has to spread out. That is the omnipresence that it gets into. So our desire or kama sublimely loses itself in sublimation. Such is the integrity of the name murugā. Murugā, 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 murugā. Such is the integrity of this beautiful name. Murugan endrale azhugu, we say in Tamil. Murugan itself means beauty. Moksha is so beautiful, and that's our Kundalini Shakti is so beautiful. And the form which its sound represents, murugā, that sound, murugā, 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 that sound represents and reverberates with murugā, 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 murugā. Imagine the vibration when you repeat this 100,000 times. It's amazing. Just try it out. Our desire attempts, that is vaLLi I'm talking about, but in reality, what it is our desire. Our desire attempts to communicate with our liberation. vaLLi attempts to communicate with murugā, but what I'm saying is, it's our desire which attempts to communicate with our liberation, right? Through what? Through letters, epistles, love letters, right? Which turn out to be very shabby, of course. Our desire is writing to our liberation. What kind of letters would they be, these love letters? They turn out to be very shabby. You've seen lovers also writing something and then they don't agree with it, crush it and throw it in old movies. Of course, these days it's all email, much easier to cut, paste, copy somebody else's love letter or just delete them. No plagiarism issues there. So anyway, we're not talking of that. These are original things. Our desire originally pens love letters to who? To our liberation. Okay, it turns out to be very shabby and disorderly, leaving not only the letter shabby and disorderly, but even desire itself to be shabby and disorderly, leaving the desire itself, I would say more appropriately, heartbroken. There's no heart on the right side, right? It's on the left side, by the way. So it leaves desire itself, heart, vanishing rather than broken, right? So our desire recollects being deserted. It doesn't have a heart on the right side. The heart is only on the left side, Devyana's side, not on the vaLLi side, or not. It's on the Artha side, not on the Kama side. The Kama is very, very skin deep, what you call as lust, right? So but it can be transformed into something beautiful. That is the whole essence of what I'm talking about over here. Okay, so even though this desire is heartbroken, or without a heart rather, our desire recollects being deserted in the dark woods by our liberation, because once the kick of moksha, the addiction to moksha, mukti, nirvana picks up, every other desire drops. Sindu, kāvaDi, sindu drops, load shedding, burden shedding, desire shedding. And this is beautifully illustrated in the Mahamrutyunjaya mantra, where we say urvarukamiva bandhanan. Just like how a cucumber drops off its creeper, because as the cucumber ripens, becomes so heavy that the creeper can't hold it, so the cucumber drops by itself. So let all my desires drop off that way. If I fight my desire, I know that it is going to become stronger and stronger. So let me not fight with my desire. Let me enhance my perceptions and go towards the higher goals like moksha, and then automatically vaLLi, or the desire, drops off, and murugā alone remains, because vaLLi is a part of murugā, not as a separate individual. So desire cannot exist all by itself. It has to be sublimated into moksha or murugā. So no wonder our desire recollects being deserted by our liberation in the dark woods, right? So next, it is valuation time. Those of you students thinking of marks, those of you in business thinking of valuation of your startups. So it is valuation time now. As simple an asset as the enchanting and endearing smile of who else but our impending liberation. Muruganin punmuruval siruppu. Aha. The way he smiles. Amazing. It's a very small smile, but conveys the brilliance. And it's not he, but it. Our liberation, the way it smiles at us, our mukti, moksha, our nirvana smiling at us. Okay? And as simple an asset as that enchanting and endearing smile of who else but our impending liberation, because it's not yet happened. We are not at Jivan Muktas. It's going to happen, but it's already smiling at us, right? That alone, that smile alone, that cute little smile alone is worth to our desire to vaLLi far more than all its prior and forthcoming acquisitions. Through our desire, we keep acquiring this and that, this new phone, this new car, this new house, wife, and so many other things. We keep buying, right? Shopping is a major addiction by itself, right? But all the acquisitions that have come, prior acquisitions, and even current acquisitions, and forthcoming acquisitions in the future also, all of them drop off, right? So what's actually happening? Because of this valuation that we are doing of that simple smile, which is of far more value, because whose smile is it? It is a smile of our own impending liberation, our mukti. So when mukti smiles at us, even if it is a small, tiny smile, that itself makes us makes not us, but our desire to kind of drop off all that it has been doing in the past, currently, and which we might do in the future, the forthcoming ones. All those acquisitions are dropped off. So our desire feels in its very pulse that our liberation is within. So this Nadi Pariksha that we do, from that you can see on the right side especially, our desire feels in its very pulse that our liberation, our murugā, our mukti, our moksha is within its reach. But yet it isn't. It's within its reach, but yet it isn't. You will see all these lines come up in VasanthiMā's song. That will be sung, of course, as a lover singing out to vaLLi kaNavan, but it's all happening in it, and which is what I'm revealing the gist of it. I'll reveal the full song after she finishes singing. So all this sounds familiar to all of you lovers out there, isn't it? Deja vu, indeed. It's essentially an optimistic forecast for our desire that it could continue to love only one entity forever. And because the desire actually keeps going, right? Jumping jack from this to that, to that, to that. No. The optimistic forecast for our desire that it can reach its goal once and for all, and that it could continue to love only one entity forever, our Kundalini Shakti, our liberation, our Mukti, Moksha, and that's our liberation. Our desire to that is vaLLi, is hopeful that it can be united with our liberation, isn't it? That's what vaLLi is always seeking. Murugā. Like that, our desire, or kama, should always be seeking moksha. vaLLi is seeking murugā. And our kama is desire, is seeking mukti. That's what it is. So for the Bhakta, this is symbolized as union with one's Ishta Devata. Right? It's not vaLLi and Murugā, but I and my Ishta Devata. Whoever is the Devata that I am most fond of, which has been Ganesha almost throughout my life, thanks to Jagima during my first year at IIT. So this is symbolized as the union with one's Ishta Devata or favorite deity, who happens to be Murugā in this case for this person who has written this song, be it the head constable or his father or the woman that they imagined themselves to be when they wrote it. Doesn't matter. It happens to be their Ishta Devata happens to be Murugā as they write the way they write this particular song. And right now, but some other deity or at some other time for somebody else, right? Whoever it is, doesn't matter. It's the same concept which remains. You just have to change the names. Different set of actors performing the same classic movies again and again because they were so awesome. Many of them are remade, right? It's similar to that. Flirting, Well, the fact is that we need to be devoted to whatever task is on our hand, because if your Ishta Devata keeps on changing, is that that's kind of something some people can't see. No, your Ishta Devata has to be the same all the time. Flirting is awesome, right? So what are we talking about here? The fact is that Bhakti is not to a particular person somewhere in Vaikunta, Kailasha, Jannat, heaven. No. What we are talking about as bhakti or devotion is whatever task needs to be done right now, here. I'm devoted to that. Only then that can be accomplished in an amazing way. And the task will keep changing, right? If my task right now is to, let's say, correct the question papers, answer papers of my students, and I'm devoted to it, does it mean that I have to be devoted to it all the time? I'm not doing that task all the time, right? I'll be doing so many different tasks in a day and in an hour and throughout the year, throughout my life. Whatever I'm doing currently at this location, I have to be devoted to it. Otherwise, how will I do it consciously? I'll just be doing it accidentally, and I'll be creating karmas instead of making it like a kriya and making it so beautiful and enabling my mukti through that. And enjoying the bliss of doing it, not just the bliss of eventually achieving mukti or moksha. No, let's not postpone that. Every task that we are doing, whether you think it is small or big, doesn't matter. All that matters is how consciously you're doing it with full devotion, completely dedicated to it. That's the real bhakti. And which means that flirting has to happen because tasks keep changing. That means you have to fall in love with and get devoted to each and every one of those tasks that you're doing at that particular point of time, wherever you are, right? So it's not flirting in a sense of a negative sense, but it's a flirting in a very, very beautiful sense. Very, it could look naughty, but it's beauty. Well, the fact is that we need to be devoted to whatever task is on our hand right now. Whatever needs to be done here and now needs to be done with devotion. Right? Else, success can only be accidental. It's not that those who are not devoted to their tasks are not successful, but they are successful accidentally, thanks to all the other karmas that they have done in the past, their thoughts, actions, and speeches in this life, in the past, as well as in the past lives, right? And because of that, they are reaping that. What is called as adrishta, luck, is that which is not seen, but it is, there's also cause for that, and I alone am responsible. Any problem I go through, any trouble I go through, any happiness I go through, any joy I go through, for everything, only person responsible is I and I alone. That has to be understood. And therefore, success will be only accidental for those who are not devoted to their tasks. Let's be devoted to any task that we do as if we are flirting with the new task on hand. Hey, I'm done with this task. Let me go to that other task. That's the flirting, okay? So, kāvaDi sindus are not entirely in traditional Carnatic ragams, but have been popularized by Nadaswaram Vidwans. We've seen in South Indian weddings, right? Just like in North Indian weddings, they play the shehnai. In the South Indian weddings, we play the Nadaswaram. So these Nadaswaram Vidwans have highly popularized these kāvaDi sindus, amazing songs in praise of murugā. That is our own mukti, moksha, liberation, our kundalini shakti, our valor, our courage to accomplish that, all of that, and the immense potential that we have to accomplish all of that. All represented by this beautiful concept of murugā, not a person murugā, not a god murugā, not a deity murugā, but a part of me, myself, that is murugā at my swadhisthana chakra, right? So these Nadaswaram Vidwans who have popularized kāvaDi sindus refer them to the beat or the nadai, and you can see the word Nadaswaram and nadai. The nadai is the way things move, the walk or the gait of a person, and nada is kind of associated with that, and that's what dance is, or Nataraja concept is. And talking of dance, there's no Sanatana Dharma deity which doesn't dance. It's not only Nataraja, there's Nartana Ganapati and Murugā, whom we are talking about. His dance is again a unique dance because he's riding the peacock, and the peacock, as you know, is one of the best dancers, our national bird. The way it raises its feathers and dances on its amazing. And way Murugā dances is he sits on the peacock. It's a sitting dance, and he is dancing in tune, in synchrony, in symphony with the mail, and the mailadum Muruganum adum. So it's like a duet in a song, but it's a duet in a dance. It's amazing partnership out there, like some of the amazing dance ballets of the Russians and some of the Eastern European experts in ballet dancing. So any given kāvaDi sindu, including the one being sung by VasanthiMā today, that is vaLLi kaNavan pérai. So all of them can thus be sung in many alternate ragas, because they were not originally meant for Carnatic music, just that the Carnatic musicians have adopted them or been gifted to them, like how Pattammal was, or a different genre altogether, right? right? Because that's kāvaDi sindu for you, folk song genre. Even I can't say within folk song, it's a separate genre by itself, right? So Srimati D.K. Pattammal, when the police constable just came and handed out a poem that he had written, she immediately tuned the head constable's song as a kāvaDi sindu, precisely the way many folk melodies on murugā were and still are traditionally rendered. But murugā is not unique here. The highly appealing or catchy kāvaDi sindu style for songs on murugā has over time been adopted for other deities too, okay? In particular Krishna. So my valor and courage likes this kind of songs, want my attractiveness also like this kind of songs. So the kind of genre which was adopted to murugas in the form of kāvaDi sindu was adopted for other gods, in particular Krishna. For example, the recently trending or virulent Maadu Meikkum Kanne. My tune is not completely off, but Maadu Meikkum Kanne, that particular song which many singers and dancers are performing too, is also in the kāvaDi sindu format, by the way. So what's wrong if our own attractiveness or Krishna borrows a tune from our own valor or courage, alias murugā? No, nothing wrong. Sharing and caring begins at home. All these Krishna, murugā, everything are different aspects of me. If they don't share within themselves, then you are not doing something which we want to teach to the outside world within us. So, just like they say charity begins at home, I say sharing and caring begins at home. And sharing and caring cannot be nurtured by themselves. It has to be through a motherly nature where sharing, caring, charity, all these happen as collateral benefits rather than as ethics to be practiced separately. No. Once your perception that you are the mother of the entire universe happens, Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Matru Rupena Samstita Namastasye, 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 Namo Nama. You have no choice but to keep bowing down to it triplets of times, right? So sharing and caring begins at home between our Swadhisthana chakra and the Anahata chakra. So whatever the Swadhisthana chakra has discovered as amazing is shared with the Anahata chakra, while the Kundalini Shakti rises and goes past the Manipura chakra and arrives at the Anahata chakra at our heart. It shares all its learnings as well. And so kāvaDi sindus originally meant for murugā are now used for Krishna songs as well. Well within ourselves, right? Sharing and caring has to begin at home, well within ourselves. The indivisible individual that we all are. We are one indeed. So please engulf us in such a sharing and caring bhava of a kāvaDi sindu, VasanthiMā, as only motherliness can accomplish it so naturally and effortlessly. VasanthiMā, kāvaDi sindu, vaLLi kaNavan pérai, please.
Sa pa sa pa sa. vaLLi kaNavan pérai vழி போக்கன் சொன்னாலும் vaLLi kaNavan péரை வழி போக்கன் சொன்னாலும் உள்ளம் குழையுதடி கிளியே, உள்ளம் குழையுதடி கிளியே, ஓனூரு குதடி கிளியே, ஓனூரு குதடி கிளியே. vaLLi kaNavan péரை வழி போக்கன் சொன்னாலும் vaLLi kaNavan péரை வழி போக்கன் சொன்னாலும் உள்ளம் குழையுதடி கிளியே, ஊனூரு கிளியே ஊனுருகுதடி ஊனுருகுதடி மாலை வடிவேலவர்க்கு மாலை வடிவேலவர்க்கு மாலை வடிவேலவர்க்கு வரிசையாய் நான் எழுதும் மாலை வடிவேலவர்க்கு வரிசையாய் நான் எழுதும் ஓலை கிறுக்காச்சுதே நான் எழுதும் ஓலை கிறுக்காச்சுதே உள்ளமும் கிறுக்காச்சுதே மாலை வடிவேலவர்க்கு வரிசையாய் நான் எழுதும் ஓலை கிறுக்காச்சுதே ஓலையும் கிறுக்காச்சுதே உள்ளமும் கிறுக்காச்சுதே கிளியே உள்ளமும் கிறுக்காச்சுதே கிளியே உள்ளமும் கிறுக்காச்சுதே எங்கும் நிறைந்திருப்போன் எங்கும் நிறைந்திருப்போன் முருகன் எங்கும் நிறைந்திருப்போன் முருகன் எங்கும் நிறைந்திருப்போம் எட்டியும் எட்டாதிருப்போன் எங்கும் நிறைந்திருப்போன் முருகன் எட்டியும் எட்டாதிருப்போம் எங்கும் நிறைந்திருப்போன் மருகன் எட்டியும் எட்டாதிருப்போம் குங்குமவர்ணனடி கிளியே குங்குமவர்ணனடி கிளியே குமர பெருமானடி கிளியே குமர பெருமானடி கிளியே குமர பெருமானடி குமர பெருமானடி கிளியே குமர பெருமானடி மாடுமனை போனால் என்ன மக்கள் சுற்றம் போனால் என்ன மாடுமனை போனால் என்ன மக்கள் சுற்றம் போனால் என்ன கோடி செம்பொன் போனால் என்ன கிளியே கோடி செம்பொன் போனால் என்ன கிளியே குறுநகை போதுமடி ஐயன் குறுநகை போதுமடி முருகன் குறுநகை போதுமடி குறுநகை போதுமடி கூடி குலாவி மெத்த குகனோடு வாழ்ந்ததெல்லாம் கூடி குலாவி மெத்த குகனோடு வாழ்ந்ததெல்லாம் வேடிக்கை அல்லபடி கிளியே வேடிக்கை அல்லபடி கிளியே வெகுநாளை பந்தமடி கிளியே வெகுநாளை பந்தமடி கூடி குலாவி மெத்த குகனோடு வாழ்ந்ததெல்லாம் வேடிக்கை அல்லபடி கிளியே வெகுநாளை பந்தமடி கிளியே வெகுநாளை பந்தமடி காட்டுக்கொடி படர்ந்த காட்டு கொடி படர்ந்த கருவுரு காட்டுக்குள்ளே காட்டுக்கொடி படர்ந்த கருவுரு காட்டுக்குள்ளே ஏ ஏ காட்டுக்குள்ளே ஏ காட்டுக்குள்ளே விட்டு பிரிந்தாரடி கிளியே என்னை விட்டு பிரிந்தாரடி கிளியே வேலனும் பேருநடி கிளியே வேலனும் பேருநடி கிளியே வேலனும் பேருநடி முருகா 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 வா வா முருகா வடிவேலழகா வா வா முருகா வடிவேலழகா முருகா 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 கந்தா கடம்பா வடிவேலா கார்த்திகை மைந்தா வடிவேலா ஹரகரோகரா சுவாமி ஹரகரோகரா அரகரோகரா சுவாமி அரகரோகரா பழனியாண்டவனுக்கு அரோகரா சரவணபவா குகா சண்முகா ஓம்.
Thanks for the mesmerizing rendition of the dance item, VasanthiMā. Couldn't help but dance myself. Of course, the others didn't see that video of me dancing for all of this. It's an amazing song. Though I have no burdens whatsoever to drop, no kāvaDi to sindu. சிந்துறதுக்கு எந்த காவடியும் இல்லை, எந்த கவலையும் இல்லை, எந்த ஒரு தூக்கின்னு இருக்க ஒரு பாரமும் இல்லை. ஸோ ஐ டோன்ட் ஹாவ் எனி burden or load to be shed, yet I dance, okay? Probably celebrating all that has already been dropped in past lives and maybe early part of this life. So I have no burdens whatsoever to drop further, and yet I dance to this beautiful song by VasanthiMā, vaLLi kaNavan pérai. उठाया तभी तो फेंकना पड़ेगा ना. हमने तो कोई बर्डन लोड उठाया ही नहीं, तो ड्रॉप करने के लिए क्या है. कावड़ी तूकिनाल ताने सिंद वेंडुम. याम தூக்காத சுமக்காத ஒரு கவலையை, ஒரு காவடியை எப்படி சிந்துவது சொல்லுங்க VasanthiMā. Not possible, but yet because you sang the kaVadi sindu, I had to dance, dropping my nothingness also. Now for the USP of our own channel, the inner yogic siddha and advaitic interpretations, a little bit of tantra also you'll see in this. It cannot escape these things in a holistic pathway of Sankhya Yoga that we have. They all come, okay? Though my prime goal pathways Advaita every now and then, the Siddha and Tantric aspects come into it as well, Bhakti and Jnana once in a while, and rarely the Karma also, I mean the Karma Yoga. So let's go for the Advaitic Siddha interpretations of the song of the day. In the Pallavi, vaLLi kaNavan pérai வழிபோக்கன் சொன்னாலும் உள்ளம் குழையுதடி கிளியே. Kili we heard about in Chidanjiri Kiliye of Bharadiyar also as a lullaby song, the first lullaby, not the second one that was the sang of an Alvar. But the concept of Kili is very, very important here. What does the Kili do or the parrot do? It just listens very actively to whatever those around it say, especially its host, and then quickly is able to Repeat that. Shravana, Manana. It's not able to do Nididhyasana, but that's the capability of a human being, that not only we can do active listening and reflection over it, japa, but to actually perform those essences as well through our actions, through our speeches, through our thoughts. And so we say kiliye here. Unum murugudadi kiliye is how the Pallavi ends. If we can think of it as Pallavis and Charanams, the usual Carnatic way of dividing. Of course, there's no Anupallavi over here. But this, as I said, is more of a folk song than a Carnatic song. So in this Pallavi, what is the head constable poet, amazing person, trying to convey over here, or he or his father maybe, he says, and he's talking to different aspects of himself over here, right? So he says, here means here with the ears, right? Here, my actively listening friend. And who is that? Kiliye. Kiliye is the only one who can actively listen. A friend, a true friend, would very keenly listen to you. And they say even a psychologist's job is half done by just listening to you. And if you have a good friend, why ever do you need a psychiatrist or psychologist? So, and here there's a parrot or a bird is enough, not even a human being, right? So here, so you say, here my actively listening friend Kiliye, my mind is overwhelmed. He says, Ullam kurayudadi. My mind is overwhelmed. Ullam kurayudadi with emotion. And unam urugudadi. Not only is my mind overwhelmed with emotions, but my body is melting. The physical body is melting. And when does this happen? Not when I am with liberation, but when somebody is even talking about liberation, I don't even know that person is a stranger. When a passerby, valipokan sontalum, valipokan means that somebody who is just going on the way, a passerby. So when a passerby utters this word, what is that? The name of liberation, the name of the husband of desire. Right? So, Kama's accomplice, Mukti or Murugā, when somebody utters the very name of that is vaLLi kaNavan pérai, valipokan sonnalum, what happens? Ullam kurayudadi, kiliye unum murugudadi. So we are saying, here my actively listening friend Kiliye, my mind is overwhelmed with emotion and my body melts when a passerby just utters, even as a time pass, the very name and sound of my liberation, by which of course I mean murugā, which is the divine fulfillment of all my desires. It's the divine fulfillment of all my desires, vaLLi. Right? The divine fulfillment of vaLLi is murugā. The divine fulfillment of all my desires is liberation. So, my mind is overwhelmed with emotion, right? And my body is melting even when a passerby just utters as a time pass. We say we eat these groundnuts as time pass while being on the beach, right? Or popcorn. That's a more important fad in movies. Popcorn, all the finger foods, all kinds of finger foods. Keep on munching on them as you keep watching a movie. Time pass. So even for a time pass, a passerby is telling the name of vaLLi's husband, that is our desires, paramour, liberation, mukti, moksha, nirvana. What happens to me? My mind is gone, my body is gone. I recognize I'm not only the body, I'm not only the mind, I'm not only the intellect, I am the radiant Atman, soft, delicious, white, pure, and beautiful as the coconut fruit inside the hard coconut shell. That's why we break a coconut. Say, ride on me as you would ride on your peacock, murugā, vaLLi murugā. That's what we seek, right? So even as time passed, the very name and sound of my liberation, which is the divine fulfillment of all my desires, when the phrase of the liberation of my desires, that is vaLLi kaNavan, the liberation of my desires. So what are we liberating? Liberating not only ourselves from the cycle of birth and death, but by doing that, one of the collateral benefits is that we are liberated from our desires as well, right? Either you desire for nothing or you desire for everything. The problem is only when you desire for something and do not desire for something else, which you start hating. This likes and dislikes start governing us, and we think our body is taking over us, or our mind is taking over us. No. They are not doing anything. They are just tools, and very useful tools, as long as you understand what to do with them, how to take care of them, and how to utilize them for various tasks in life. But the real problem is we are desiring for something and hating something else. These likes and dislikes, the pairs of opposites, are the ones which always create a problem. So the phrase of the liberation of my desires, or vaLLi kaNavan, is even uttered by a wayfarer. My mind is softened. Okay, kūvaDi means like how a jelly is, how some kind of really, what do you say, something which is so soft and jelly, gelish, like a gel, G-E-L or J-E-L-L-Y. So that's essentially what it is like. The mind becomes like that before, of course, vanishing. Oh, my self-imaging and self-mirroring friend, parrot, the kiliye, right? What does the parrot do? It's not just bouncing off what we say, it's a self-image. Like how when you see a mirror, what do you get? It's mirroring yourself. In this case, it's mirroring the sound. It's a sound mirror. Usually we have a light mirror used to see your face or whatever. Here it's a sound mirror which is just reflecting back your sound. That's a parrot. It's a good friend who's actively listening and is giving you a self-image, who can tell you on your face what you are, who you are, what you're like, and what needs to be changed of you. That's what. That's why we say kiliye. It's an endearing term for a friend, but at the same time, the quality of that, why kili rather than kaka or kuruvi or some other bird, pora or whatever. Why we are saying kiliye means. We say this to our children also, to anybody, our parent who is very dear to us, like a friend, right? So that friendliness is actually in terms of the ability to reflect ourselves in a true sense, not as a convex or concave mirror or a colored mirror. No. Reflecting you as you are, with your sound as well. In particular the sound, because that's the real important thing. A man or a woman can be very easily gauged by what he or she says, not while acting, but in their regular day-to-day life. From that, the volumes, the kind of the volume in both sense, how much they speak and at what decibel level noise they create through their speech. Both can be very good diagnostic tools to understand the spiritual evolution of a person. So my mind is softened. Oh, my self-imaging and sound mirroring parrot. It's not just my mind, but even my physical identification with my bodily flesh melts away, oh parrot. So that's essentially what was the Pallavi. Then we went on to the Charanam, where VasanthiMā said, Yengum niraindirupon, ettiyum ettadirupon, kunkuma varnanadi kiliye, kumara perumanadi. What beautiful lyrics. Very simple words, easy to understand for Tamilians at least. And then There are many Tamilians who don't know Tamil, but many non-Tamilians who know Tamil much better. Some of my friends done amazing literature, scholarly work in Tamil, but they are not Tamilians by birth. It's just because of their love for that great ancient classical language, on par with Sanskrit as my mother and Tamil as my father, right? ஸோ எங்கும் நிறைந்திருப்போன் எட்டியும் எட்டாதிருப்போன் குங்கும வர்ணனடி கிளியே குமர பெருமானடி. ஸோ ஹியர் what again we are saying to the same friend, right? Actively listening friend, what is also my rebounding friend. He's rebounding whatever I am saying. So just like a bouncy ball, no, you throw at a wall and it comes back, or you throw at a ground, comes back, keeps coming back, or like gravity, you push whatever goes up has to come down. So here we're talking about, once again, the head constable or his father, or actually us. We are telling what here, my rebounding friend, my near infrared vermilion hued liberation is the one which fills our entire creation. What is that? Kunkuma varna is vermilion hued, right? What is that vermilion hued? Near infrared. See, we can see only between these colors of violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red, and their combinations. That is the range of wavelengths or natural frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum that we can see. But that's such a teeny weeny little bit of the entire spectrum. Even what engineers, technologists and medicine experts use, like x-rays, all the gamma rays and infrared and ultraviolet and the radio waves and all these kinds of things that are there, and beyond them also, which probably we don't even have names for, right? So my near infrared vermilion hued, because the vermilion or kumkum, I don't have it today, but usually kept over here, not only by women but by men also. So that is the color of our courage. That is the color of our valor. Valor color, you see the rhyming words there. So here, my rebounding friend, my near infrared, which means I cannot perceive it through my eyes. Similarly, sounds also, normal, there are ENT surgeons and ENT specialists like my sister Dr. Sankhya Shanmugam who are listening to this discourse. We know that normal human beings just can hear only between frequency range of 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. That is if their ears are working properly, that is. Otherwise, we go to people like Sankhya, thanks to them. But there's so much of sound below 20 hertz, right? The infra sounds and the ultra sounds, which are basically beyond 20,000 hertz, 20 kilohertz, those sounds can be heard by various living beings, various animals. So just because we can hear only this range doesn't mean there are no other sounds, just that we can't hear it, right? So what are we talking about here? The color of our valor and courage is an extreme red, vibgyor. It's not violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, but red. Just a little bit more and it would become infrared and invisible. It could be visible using certain technological gadgets which fighter pilots, etc. use for infrared vision, especially night vision cameras and so on, right? But here, my rebounding friend, Kiliye, my near infrared vermilion hued liberation, Kunkuma Varnanadi, is the one which fills our entire creation with its divine presence. What does he do? He fills our valor and courage. What does it do? It fills. Fills what? Fills whatever we are creating. Whatever is from our chit shakti. We are creating that, right? So our valor and courage, our liberation is filling our entire creation. Because everything is our creation. I see the world in one way, you see the world in another way. It's only because you are creating your own world, I'm creating my own world. And we recreate it every other moment. And recreate is a beautiful word because it's used for recreation also, entertainment. We are doing all this as if in a play, as a leela. But just that we are not seeing it as a leela, we getting very serious about it and getting negative emotions, depression, all these kinds of funny things unnecessarily, right? Not to make fun of people going through these issues, but if it were taken care of early on by these kinds of spiritual knowledge discourses that somebody else could have shared with them, that could have been completely avoided. Prevention is the best cure. What do you do after all has happened? Then it becomes very difficult to get over all of these things, and you need allopathic psychiatrists and psychologists. But why even let go of people till that stage? Can't we give them some of this knowledge, share some of this knowledge so that they can completely avoid it? That's the essence of it. So our entire creation is pervaded by this near infrared liberation through its divine presence. Amazing. So our liberation gives the impression that it is easily accessible, but actually it isn't. What do we say? Ettiyum ettadirupon. Ettiyum. Okay, even if I make myself taller by some means and try to reach out, I cannot reach. Ettiyum ettadirupon. So what is essentially being said here is that our liberation, or rather our valor and courage to seek liberation, gives the impression that it is easily accessible. It's right here in our Swadhisthana Chakra. But actually it isn't, because we have not invoked it yet. We have to awaken it, sing a suprabhata to it, right? Tuthi porku valvinai pom. But tuthi kadavurku engandu pom valvinai. So that's essentially what we are talking about here. Our liberation gives the impression that it is easily accessible, but actually it is not. So here, my parroting friend, the Kunkuma colored Lord Kumara, another name for murugā, referring to our liberation as our own child, Kumara. In my name we have Dinesh Kumar, Arur Sampath Kumar, or Kumara means what? My child. Right? So in a sense I am Dinesh Kumar, means the son of the sun, the SON of the SUN, right? So Kumara is another name for murugā, and that's why we are saying Kumara Perumanadi Kiliye, Kumara Perumanadi. You heard it in a much better voice from VasanthiMā, probably spoiling it, but I just want to convey my heartfelt feelings on that. Okay, so here my parroting friend, the Kunkuma colored Lord Kumara, is the one who fills the entire world with his divine presence. We think that he is easily accessible. Actually our valor, courage, our liberation, we think that it's easily accessible, actually meaning that our liberation is easily accessible, but actually it isn't. Actually it isn't. Hai bhi hai, nahi hai bhi. That's essentially what modern physics is moving to. I am, and yet I am not. You see me, yet you see me not. You have that plant, right, which we used to play with as children. Touch me not. Right? So, what is actually happening here? The principle of uncertainty, the duality, whether we are mass or energy, whether we are matter or the source of matter. And again, it's the chicken and egg story, or the tree and the seed story. We don't know which came first, but it's essentially a cycle, and we want to be liberated from that as well. So meaning that our liberation is easily accessible, but actually it isn't. Liberation is available everywhere. Yes, liberation is available everywhere. It's in your Swadhisthana Chakra, my Swadhisthana Chakra, everyone's Swadhisthana Chakra is having that valor and courage to seek that liberation. Being everywhere, being omnipresent, though near, in our own Swadhisthana chakra, 2 inches below the navel, right within, at the back, right within our spinal cord, inside our backbone. That's where it's mapped to in the physical body, but it's in the subtle body. So though near, it is beyond touch or access. Can you touch your Swadhisthana chakra? No. You can't touch it with your fingers. But you can touch it with your inner being through dhyana. It's like this joke, a very funny joke. I shouldn't say it's funny before telling the joke. Let's see if you laugh at it. This involves a person. You might have even heard different versions of it from other people. It involves a person, a patient actually, who goes to his or her doctor and complains of pain. If he touches here, it pains. If he touches here, it also pains. If he touches here, it pains. If he touches here, also it pains. If he touches here, also it pains. If he touches here, again it pains, right? And pain everywhere, wherever he touches his body, right? So the doctor was sapped. He's seen people with pains in different parts of the body, but not this much. Wherever this person touches, it's so painful. So after detailed examination, and of course, you know, these hospitals today, series of diagnostic tests to make the money out of you, the doctor told the patient that he has, as most doctors do, one good news as well as a bad news. And no, the bad news is not the big bill of the diagnostic tests alone. There's another bad news as well. So he asks, what do you need first? Our friend, the patient, says, okay, even at a hospital or with a doctor, there's a good news. Well, I might as well get the good news first. So the doctor says, the good news is that there's nothing wrong with any of the parts of your body. Huh? But when I touch here, it pains. When I touch there, it pains. When I touch there, it pains. Still, there's nothing wrong with any of the parts of your body. And then he asks, okay, what is the bad news? Tell me. With this amazing good news, maybe I will swallow that bad news as well. Yeah, I know one of the bad news is the big fat bill, but what else? Doctor says, yes, there's no pain, no problem with any part of your body, but the bad news, of course, is that your finger is broken. That's why with that finger, when you're touching here, it pains, it's touching here, it pains, here it pains, here it pains. What is paining is actually the finger, not the... but you're feeling that pain just because you're touching with the same finger, you're touching different parts of the body, right? But even if you were to touch something else, it would still hurt you, right? Because what is hurt is the finger. Right? It's also like that joke where there are a bunch of friends and they count and find one of them is missing, and each one of them counts again. They find one is missing. They started off with 10 people. There are only 9 people now. And then a passerby comes and counts and says, you fools, you are already 10. The person, each of you, when you're counting, you're not counting yourself, you're counting only the others, right? It's very similar to this. These look like fools. These look like stupid idiots. But that's what we are in most of our behaviors all the time, right? So this is essentially what we are unfortunately doing over and over time. So let's stop this stupidity. Okay, it's good to laugh at a joke, but and to laugh at oneself as well. But how long can you and I remain jokers, right? So let's move on. So the bad news, of course, in that case was that the finger was broken. Here, there's no broken finger either. Let's do things in a far better fashion, more evolved fashion. So we seek what is right here and now. Where are we seeking it? But not within us. We are seeking it all over the place. Like that patient was touching all over the place and feeling pain everywhere without knowing that the pain is here. That's about pain. Here we are searching for the truth or God or deity or the ultimate or the Brahman or the Atman, and we are seeking it all over the place in temples, in pilgrimages, in nature, through mountains, through oceans, through rivers. Yes, of course, it's omnipresent, so it's all over there as well. But where it's most accessible, there we are not seeing. That is the problem. So just like the person didn't see that the pain was in the finger, the eternity that we are searching for, the immortality that we are searching for, the omnipresence that we are searching for, the omnipotence that we are searching for, the omniscience that we are searching for, that so-called God, so-called murugā, so-called vaLLi, whatever the names that you might give to the entity, it's right here now within us. So in is the only way out. So we seek what is right here and now all over the place. Whether it is the joys or troubles, we alone are responsible for it all and need to look at ourselves for solutions rather than outer solace. Right? Solace is so easy to get. Anybody can give you, even if they're not your true friends. Right? Which is always superficial, because solace is always superficial, temporary. What we want is a permanent solution, which is a deep solution, not superficial, not temporary. Right? So our liberation is of the color of vermilion, kunkuma varnanadi, for without renunciation, represented by kavi, the sannyasis or swamis wear earth-colored cloth, which is basically kavi, what we call a saffron. That is the reddish hue that it has, that kavi color that I have all around me as well over here. But no liberation is possible without the renunciation that it refers to. You may not be wearing kavi, but are you kavi in your mind? Have you renounced? Have you dropped off everything? Have you sindu the kāvaDi? Have you done the kāvaDi sindu? Not sung the kāvaDi sindu, heard the kāvaDi sindu, chanted the kāvaDi sindu. No. Those are all fine as exercises. But the real thing, the burden load has to be shed, dropped, spilt. Okay, so our liberation is of the color of vermilion, for without renunciation, represented by kavi or saffron, no liberation is possible. Oh parrot, again we're referring to our friend, a rebounding friend, our self-reflecting friend, and saying, he is Kumara, like our own child, my own valorous attempt at liberation, personified here as a divine child, Kumara Murugā. And in the second charam, there are 5, by the way. Thanks for your patient listening, because this is amazing wisdom conveyed in amazingly, even more amazingly simple words. That simplicity is what bowls me over, right? So what are we talking about over here? Malai vadi velarku varishail நான் எழுதும் ஓலை கிறுக்காச்சுதே கிளியே உள்ளமும் கிறுக்காச்சுதே. கிறுக்கு, scribbling, right? மாலை வடிவேலனுக்கு வரிசையாய் means row after row. நான் எழுதும், I am writing ஓலை, that is the letter, love letter or epistle. கிறுக்காச்சுதே கிளியே உள்ளமும் கிறுக்காச்சுதே. Oh my dear mirror-like friend. Yahoo, parrot. Oh my dear mirror-like friend. I'm talking to myself over here actually. Who else can be a true mirror? Okay, mirror-like friend. Oh my dear mirror-like friend. Thinking that I am writing a beautiful letter, stanza after stanza, of a poetic epistle to my liberation, which dwells on the seemingly inaccessible peaks. Malayallam Kumaran Vaazhum madam, right? Kundrathil Kumaranadi. So, what are we talking about here? Instead, we are talking of the mukti rather than murugā. So stanza after stanza of a poetic epistle to my liberation, which dwells on the seemingly inaccessible peaks. Looks so inaccessible, the peak, right? You have to climb up to the peak. It's not an outer pilgrimage where you're climbing an actual hill, mountain, or even a hillock is difficult for some people. No. The inner hill that we have unnecessarily built up. That's what we want to reach out to, right? So, to reach those peaks and to my liberation, I started scribbling down. And it ended as trivial trash indeed. Like how in these old movies, we keep trashing the love letters, right? The hero or the heroine, right? Like that. It ended up as trivial trash indeed. It's not just those papers which ended up in those days, probably vaLLi, that is on the leaves that they used to write, that ended up as trash. But trash is good actually. It becomes manure for the plants and trees and makes the forest more beautiful and green, right? So not only have my writings gone crazy, but my mind itself has gone madly berserk for my liberation too. Unless what? We want our liberation so badly. We cry for it. We shed tears for it. And genuinely hanker for it. Not only with tears, with blood and sweat and whatever. The karma yoga or the bhakti yoga or the jnana yoga or the raja yoga or the sankhya yoga, combination of that through tantra, through siddha practices, whatever they may be. Unless we want our liberation so badly and genuinely hanker for it with blood, sweat and tears, it's impossible to attain liberation. Or for that matter, any meaningful goal of significance, leave alone liberation, that's the ultimate goal. Even if you are to cook some food, or you have to, let's say, go to work and accomplish something, or to study and pass an exam, or be whatever it is, be successful in your love affair, or be successful in getting a child, whatever that task might be, unless you work towards it, you would not be able to attain that, right? More so liberation. It's impossible to attain. Because it is the case with any meaningful goal for that matter, anything that is of significance. You want to build a temple or build a house, whatever it might be. It has to be something meaningful. That's what has to be your goal. Something of significance in life and to life. Otherwise, what is the meaning of these stupid goals that we are chasing? No. It has to be significant in life and to life. Significant in life, significant to life. Okay, and life is not like your life, my life. It's life. We are all capturing a part of that life, just like bubbles over here, right? So the row of letters that I wrote, okay, it's also in terms of number of letters, and within each letter the lines which are going in row after row, right? Hopefully frame of mind that I'm writing in straight lines, otherwise it'll be going in all kinds of crooked paths. Vakratunda, right? So the row of letters that I wrote to my liberation ended as what? It ended up as mere graffiti. You see that scribblings on the walls in those days. Luckily, the election commission has banned all of them, especially those of you in Tamil Nadu, West Bengal. You're seeing this video. You would probably not see much of that graffiti, which used to be part of elections many decades back. But still, things are equally bad in terms of the way people are talking about each other. Okay, and that apart. Oh, reflective friend. Whom am I talking to? The parrot, reflecting myself, right? Oh, reflective friend, who bounces back my thoughts. Not only my words, but my thoughts, my actions as well. And my mind also took on the form of triviality. Scribbled graffiti, right? That's what it became, right? It's not just volai kirukachide kiliye, but ullamum kirukachide. Kiruk means Crazy, right? Trivially scribbled graffiti. That's what my mind has become. Then the head constable goes on to sing கட்டுக்கொடி படர்ந்த கருவு கருவுரு கட்டுக்குள்ளே விட்டு பிறந்தாரடி என்னை வேலன் என்னும் பேரோனடி. Right? So what is the head constable saying here? Here, my friend, my liberation, the one who is called Vela, Murugā. Vela actually means lancer. That was my first car after returning to India, a Mitsubishi Lancer, the winner of many rallies. But what we are talking about is the real Lancer over here, Velan. Vel is lance, Velan is lancer, right? So my liberation, the one who is called Vela, because veil or lance is the weapon of choice of murugā, gifted to him by śaśti, or in other words, our Agnya Chakra gifting it to our Swadhisthana Chakra, a power that through which the Kundalini Shakti can rise all the way up to herself and beyond to the nothingness as well. Our Father, which art in heaven, here. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. In heaven as in earth as in heaven, whatever. Because all of that heaven, hell, earth is right here and now. So the one who is called Vela has left me behind and gone away into the seemingly inaccessible dark woods, whose ground is covered by wild creepers all over. What are we referring to? You're not referring to all this in a dramatic forest sense, really. It's all happening inside us, right? What is it we are referring to? Referring to the hurdles in our path to mukti, moksha, nirvana, liberation. In the dark forest where wild climbers spread, my own valorous spirit towards liberation from my Swadhisthana Chakra parted with me, parrot, the human spirit whose name is Lancer. The human spirit whose name is Velan. Okay. மாடுமனை போனால் என்ன, மக்கள் சுற்றம் போனால் என்ன, கொடிச்செம்பொன் போனால் என்ன, கிளியே குறுநகை போதுமடி கிளியே, முருகன் குறுநகை போதுமடி கிளியே. I care a damn even if I lose everything. Be it my house, my cattle, conveyances, tools, family members, and all wealth of gold. I care a damn if I lose all of them. It's enough if I can merely retain in my memory those glimpses of my own valorous spirit smiling at me, the valorous, courageous nature of me taking me towards liberation, the Kundalini Shakti that I don't visualize but actually perceive in my subtle causal bodies and beyond. That's essentially the only true valuable, or rather invaluable asset. Everything else can be easily given up. If it's there, fine, well and good, enjoy it. If it goes one day, no issues. The real thing is already in us and will be in us, whatever the state of this body, even when it becomes a dead body. The spirit alone is. That's the valor, the courage doesn't go out anywhere. So what if all my possessions such as cattle, house, madumanai we say, right? And body, mind, intellect are all lost. So what if family, friends and relatives are lost too? So what if crores worth of my purified and reddened gold is also lost? Oh parrot, the mere smile of my own valorous spirit is sufficient. The pun muruval of murugā is ample treasure, right? கூடி குலாவி மெத்த குகனோடு வாழ்ந்ததெல்லாம் வேடிக்கை அல்லவடி கிளியே வேடிக்கை அல்லவடி வெகுநாளின் பந்தமடி கிளியே வெகுநாளின் பந்தமடி. My valorous spirit deserted me in the dark woods of ignorance, which were full of dense wild creepers or obstacles all over the trees of arrogance. That valorous spirit of mine, which left me alone in loneliness, is the one who is called Lancer, Valen, just to inculcate in me the ability to match. Why does it desert us once in a while? Because even in love, you know that separation enhances the love, right? Most of the amazing creative love poetry or love proses have been written in separation, right? That hankering for that which we are separated from is what this entire creation is all about. We are from Brahman, going back to Brahman. This in-between time when we are still Brahman, but we think we are separate from Brahman, that separation is what creates bhakti, creates jnana, creates karma, creates yoga, creates kriya, right? So all of this drama, this leela, this game that we are enjoying is all because of separation. What has Valen done by being separate from our desire? Just to inculcate in me the ability, because we want to keep enhancing our abilities, right? So just to inculcate in me the ability to magically transform what? My depressive loneliness into a redeeming solitude. Loneliness, solitude, many people think these are synonyms, can be found in a thesaurus. No, friend. You're very different. Just like childlike and childish. You ought to be childlike, innocent, but not childish and immature, right? Similarly, here we are talking of a transformation, a magical transformation of my depressive loneliness, because loneliness creates depression when taken far enough. But magically transform that depressive loneliness to a redeeming solitude. Solitude can take you towards liberation. It can you can redeem yourself. You're separated from liberation, and that solitude can redeem you towards liberation. It's an amazing game, right? Game on. So I have had a roaring affair with my own valorous spirit. It wasn't merely a trivial one-night stand, but an eternal bond, which should not become a bondage or a kāvaDi. Right? A bond, eternal bond is amazing, but bondage, once you add the suffix age to bond, the bond that we have with our liberation, with our true spirit, becomes bondage, the kāvaDi, right? So it wasn't merely a trivial one-night stand, a flirtation. No, it was way beyond that. Eternal bond. A bond which lasts forever, which shouldn't become a bondage or a kāvaDi. That's why sindu, kāvaDi sindu. If it does become a bondage for some reason, I should be able to drop it right away via kāvaDi sindu. Keep listening to many more kāvaDi sindus also, apart from what you heard from VasanthiMā today. Because meeting and conversing timelessly, nay, bringing time itself to a standstill. They say time doesn't stop for anybody, be it a king or any other army person or a policeman. However great you are, time never stops, right? but meeting and conversing timelessly, nay, bringing time itself to a standstill. The clock stops. And living in, yes, live in relationship here too. And living in, with who? With my own valorous and liberative spirit in the inner cave of my heart, guha. That's why another name for this principle of my own valor and courage, apart from murugā, krittikā, kumara, is guru guha. Guru, that which redeems us from the darkness. And guha is the cave, in the inner cave of my heart, right? So what we are talking about is the to be living in with my own valorous and liberative spirit in the inner cave of my heart, or guhaikulla, in the cave, guha, isn't mere fleeting entertainment, O parrot. It's not a fleeting entertainment alone, O parrot. It's a long-term relationship of commitment, a true marriage. வேல் முருகனுக்கு அரோஹரா, ஞான தண்டாயுதபாணிக்கு அரோஹரா, சிங்கார வேலனுக்கு அரோஹரா, சதாச்சார முருகனுக்கு அரோஹரா, கந்தா கதிர்வேலா மைந்தா மறைநாயகனே, நீ தத்துவமாகி நேமத்துணையாகி போதத்தயவானே, போதை தருவாயே, நாதத்துணியோனே, ஞானக்கடலோனே, கோதற்றமுதோனே, கூடற் பெருமாளே, வசனமிக வேற்றி மறவாதே, மனது துயராற்றில் உழலாதே, இசப்பயில் சடாட்சர மதனாலே, பசுபதி சிவாகியமுணர்வோனே, பழனிமலை மீட்டு மிகவாழா, வருக வருக முருகா வருக, ஏறுமயில் ஏறி விளையாடு முகமொன்று, ஈஸ்வருடன் ஞான மொழி பேசும் முகமொன்று, கூறும் அடியார்கள் வினை தீர்க்க முகமொன்று, குன்றுவ வேல் வாங்கி நின்ற முகமொன்று, மாறுப்படை சூரனை வதைத்த முகமொன்று, வள்ளியை மனம் புணர வந்த முகம் ஒன்று, ஆறுமுகமான பொருள் நீ அருளல் வேண்டும், ஆதி அருணாச்சலம் அமர்ந்த பெருமாளே, பக்தியால் யானுனை பல காலம் பற்றியே மா திருப்புகழ் பாடி, முத்தனா மாறனை பெருவாழ்வில் முக்தியே சேர்வதற்கருள்வாய், உத்தமா ஞான குணனையா ஒப்பிலா மாமணி கிரிவாசா, வித்தகா ஞான சக்தி பாதா, வெற்றிவேலாயுத பெருமாளே, வெற்றிவேலாயுத பெருமாளே, வெற்றிவேல் ஆயுத பெருமாளே, துதிப்போர்க்கு வல்வினைப்போம் துன்பம் போம், நெஞ்சில் பதிப்போர்க்கு செல்வம் பலித்து கதி தோங்கும், நிஷ்டையும் கைகூடும் நிமலரருள் கந்த ஷஷ்டி கவசந்தனை, அமரரிடம் தீர அமரம் புரிந்த குமரனடி நெஞ்சே குறி, ஷஷ்டியை நோக்க சரவண பவனார் சிஷ்டருக்கு உதவும் செங்கதிர் வேலோன், பாதம் இரண்டில் பொன்மணி சதங்கை கீதம் பாட கிண்கிணி ஆட மைய நடனம் செய்யும் மயில்வாகனார், வருக வருக முருகா வருக.